And we've
Heart
been
of
on
midlife crisis. Not gonna lie, it's Mikey G and Maddie Mintz. And why it is because over 30 years ago, I met this crazy SOB at the fourth grade bus stop. I swear to you, when I first laid eyes on this dude, he was perpendicular to the ground, or not perpendicular, like horizontal to the ground, hanging at a 90-degree off a stop sign. And I was like, what the hell did I just get myself into? And since that, we had a budding, flourishing relationship, been best friends our whole lives. Obviously, life got in the way. You go to college, you get married, you start businesses, things happen. Fittingly enough, our midlife crisis brought us back together, hence the name. We're older than most people in this space, but we found NFTs about a year ago, and then we said, you know what, we're really gonna create a company. As we get more connected, as we go into the metaverse, what we're about to do is meeting new people, having real, raw conversations. We think it's gonna become a lost art. So we're here to make that happen, to bring it all to you, and to help you expand, learn, and grow. And we came up with a very simple mission statement. That mission statement is to bring back the lost art of genuine human connection. And I got one last thing to say, and I'm dead serious when I say this. I genuinely, and Maddie genuinely believes we were put on earth to do exactly what we're doing now. We love doing this. We love meeting new people, and it just gets us so freaking excited. We think you as family, and we love you all. So, at the base and the heart of midlife crisis, not gonna lie, it's Mikey G and Maddie Mintz. And why it is because over 30 years ago, I met this crazy SOB at the fourth grade bus stop. I swear to you, when I first laid eyes on this dude, he was perpendicular to the ground, or not perpendicular, like horizontal to the ground, hanging at a 90-degree off a stop sign. And I was like, what the hell did I just get myself into? And since that, we had a budding, flourishing relationship, been best friends our whole lives. Obviously, life got in the way. You go to college, you get married, you start businesses, things happen. Fittingly enough, our midlife crisis brought us back together, hence the name. We're older than most people in this space, but we found NFTs about a year ago, and then we said, you know what, we're really gonna create a company. As we get more connected, as we go into the metaverse, what we're about to do is meeting new people, having real, raw conversations. We think it's gonna become a lost art. So we're here to make that happen, to bring it all to you, and to help you expand, learn, and grow. And we came up with a very simple mission statement. That mission statement is to bring back the lost art of genuine human connection. And I got one last thing to say, and I'm dead serious when I say this. I genuinely, and Maddie genuinely believes we were put on earth to do exactly what we're doing now. We love doing this. We love meeting new people, and it just gets us so freaking excited. We think you as family, and we love you all. So, at the base and the heart of midlife crisis, not gonna lie, it's Mikey G and Maddie Mintz. And why it is because over 30 years ago, I met this crazy SOB at the fourth grade bus stop. I swear to you, when I first laid eyes on this dude, he was perpendicular to the ground. What up, folks? Mike G. Maddie Mintz back on a Thursday night with our man, the myth, the legend, Bongolo. I always want to say Bongolo. I don't know why I want to add an extra O, but Bongolo's here, and we're gonna vibe out and have a real good time. Maddie, how you doing, brother? It's getting
Dude,
close to the Florida
getting
move.
real close. This was my last day, official last day personal training. And so little bittersweet because it's really something I love to do. It's just a passion of mine. You know that, Mikey. I've always been into fitness and I love being able to help other people with that journey. But man, I'm just so excited about what's coming next. It's going to be really cool. And just freeing up that time to be able to focus more on the stuff we need to do here with midlife and just we're at a turning point, and we can feel it in the air. So it's just really cool, man. It's really exciting. But
Hell yeah, man.
good time. I had amazing clients, and it was cool to feel the love. It was good.
That is cool, man. And it's coming to an end, but it's really the beginning because we're going to be able to
Mm-hmm.
concentrate a lot more on this stuff.
You got it.
Just in time for me to hopefully have a kid. That'll be another
There you go.
roadblock, but
Exactly.
we'll
What?
figure it out,
How are you doing, man?
dude.
How's everything going?
Well, like I was telling you, so listen, Maddie and I have some sleep issues. And I
What?
was having some problems sleeping last night. And I have these like, they're like the DEF CON 9, what is it? DEF CON 5, whatever the term is. It's like when you're in a serious sitch, you turn to these pills. And I
Oh,
said, you
jeez.
know what? I'm not going to take one. I am really can't go to sleep. I'm going to take two. Bad idea. Really bad idea because I felt like I've been insanely hungover all day and I'm
Dude,
so tired right now, but I'm ready. It's funny. I slept like a rock last night, but I'm more tired than I am when I get 4 hours of sleep.
dude, they wipe you out, man. They wipe you out.
Oh,
So it's
bro.
funny little side story about that. I went to urgent care one time. Same exact thing. I was like, everybody keeps telling me about like these prescription medications you can get. And so it's like, man, not sleeping great. Let me see what it's all about. Had a conversation with the doctor there. This guy goes, all right, here's what I'm going to do. All right, I'm going to write a script. I'm going to give you two doses of this sleep aid. I don't even remember what it was called. But what I remember was his description and how serious he got, because he was a pretty laid back like doctor. And he said, listen, do yourself a favor. Go get yourself like some Tylenol PM or some Advil PM. Try that first. If you have some success, great. Don't worry about these. If that doesn't work, sure, give it a try. But you will hallucinate when you take this.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, bro just said I'm gonna trip balls if I take this sleep medication.
Uh,
So not gonna lie, I took some Advil PM, slept fine. Same exact description as you, Mikey. I was conked
oh.
out zombie the next day. I took those two pills, immediately flushed that down the toilet, bro. Could you imagine Maddie Mintz hallucinating? No way. Not a good
Immediately
day for
flush that
anybody.
down the toilet.
Yeah.
Well, that was a fun intro. That Metasculptor, thanks for the Metasculptor count comes in the chat and he goes, "Good night, fam." And that was it. He literally came to give us a
I
view
love
so
it.
he could lurk.
Dude,
That's how
so
much he
great.
cares about us. But let's
That's
go,
awesome.
man,
We
Maddie. Let's
appreciate it.
get intro to our man Bongolo because I can't wait to have this
All right.
conversation.
So, Bongolo, we're going to call Bongolo Bill for the rest of this conversation. And I kind of like that because Bill's it's a great name. It's
It
a
is a
very
good
succinct
name.
name. And by the way, it is just Bill, folks. That is it on the birth certificate,
Yep.
Bill. And so I
Nothing
love that.
else. Not William.
Now, not exactly, not Billy, Bill. Okay. So, power name there. Listen, you all know he's the co founder and the co host of Builder's Block. Here's what you may not know: has a track record of success, even though he's very young. He is so at 11th grade, he actually broke the state record for in cross country. So this dude is a maniac when it comes to running and fitness, and he understands competition. But then he took that and applied it to academics, and we're going to get into this too. But he is a published environmental microbiologist. It's a mouthful to say, folks.
He almost got
He's
tripped, man.
he,
He almost got tripped up there.
I almost, yeah, I
I'm
was like,
impressed,
whew,
though. I'm
man.
impressed.
Listen, when your title has to go into a second line on a business card, you do something important. Um, and so, yeah, pretty amazing right off the bat there. But a little fun fact. Just thought this was kind of cool. Um, Member of Delta Tau Delta, which is the fraternity that Will Ferrell is a part of, which I thought was really interesting. And then you do what was the now Mikey, I'm breaking down here.
What?
Was that the fun fact? That was it the fraternity?
The fraternity, but what else was it? I was hoping you wrote it down. Bill, what was the other
Bill.
fun fact?
I don't know. Might have been the continent thing.
Yes, it
Oh,
was the
okay. That's
continent
it. That's
thing.
you know what happened? You said the whole thing about Will Ferrell being in your fraternity, and I'm not my brain just was like on that loop. This is an interesting fact, and a lot of people can't say this. He only had of all the continents in the world, Bill has been to all of them but two. And you can probably guess one of them. Antarctica, that's a tough one, but the other one is Europe. But he's been to all the other ones. I feel like Europe's going to be one you can check off fairly easy when the time is right. Antarctica, man, I don't know, man. That just seems like if you're doing that, it's really just because you're going for like the whole set. But
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a reason to go. But you know what? Microbiologist, that could be a thing, right? Is that a thing? Is microbiology? Do they do studies down when it's that cold, Bill?
They definitely could. I know Antarctica is like the one polar ice cap that has land underneath it, so that definitely could be a thing if there's some like ancient microbes in the soil or something. That'd be kind of cool.
Dude, you
All
just
right,
blew
see,
my mind. I didn't even know
see,
that was a thing.
that's it.
Land below the snow cap in Antarctica? Would have never known.
Either way, guys, we're going to have an amazing time tonight. We already had some questions. One of my favorite ways we intro this, because, you guys know by now that Mike and I, we always talk whoever our guest is before we go live, right? Just get some fun facts and some trivia and just like kind of set people at ease, give them an idea what's going to happen on the show. And some of my favorite conversations stem from just during that brief little period of time when I already start writing down questions I want to ask. Then I know it's going to be a good conversation. So I'm looking forward to it. Bill, how you doing, man?
Doing well, doing well. Been a real busy start to the year, but in retrospect, it's all opportunity, and that's been a really exciting thing, honestly. On it, like the past 2 days, honestly, today and the next 2 days actually are like the first bit of breathing room I've had.
Mm,
But just
Damn,
feeling
dude.
feeling that up.
That's over
Yeah,
a
I've been
month.
feeling that up.
yeah, it's a
We
long
love it.
time, man. But here
We
we
love it.
are.
Hell yeah, man. Well, I am excited to have you, and we're going to go straight into it, buddy. We need
Beautiful.
the midlife crisis, world famous question coming at you. How'd you get to the seat you're sitting in today? Star Wars episode 1, 2, and 3. Remember, 1 is your childhood, 2 is schooling up to maybe publishing that sweet ass paper, and then 3 is how you found Web3 and beyond, brother. So let's have it.
Beautiful. Just one comment on the Star Wars theme. I went back and watched all the Star Wars through last week. There is like 9 or 10 of them now, which is ridiculous.
Isn't
Don't
that
necessarily
crazy?
recommend the new ones. Stick to the 70s and 80s. We love that one, the OG.
Of course.
Yep.
But
Yep.
yeah, I started in a little town, about 30,000 people, tucked away on the southwest of Australia. West Australia is actually the biggest state in the world land-wise, but it only has about 2 million people across the whole thing.
Really? Only 2 million
Yeah,
across the
two
entire.
or three, or two to three
Holy
when I was there.
shit! I would have never
Mm.
known that. That's small.
But yeah, it's pretty nuts. It's definitely tucked away. Like it's funny being in the States now and just having the perspective of being front and center of stuff. And
Yeah.
then back then
Mhm.
it's like that was my perspective. That was normal. Like I'd watch Transformers and be like, oh, they're going after New York again. Just like any movies, it's all based in America, and it was like watching something that I'm not even really part of, being just tucked away there. But
All
I
right.
did have I had family over here, and so I've been coming over every year since I was pretty much born. Up in
Okay.
Utah and Montana, been coming over to
Ooh.
snowboard and ski. But the context for that is pretty much like the time to travel from Albany, the little town I grew up in, to
Mhm.
Montana. it was something like 56 hours or just straight traveling, just gnarly because
What?
you're so tucked away. So
Holy shit, that's
Yeah.
insane. That's over
Yeah, that's a long.
straight days of traveling. That has to be miserable, huh?
Please tell me you stayed for a while.
oh, most definitely, most definitely. And it
Okay.
was mostly when I was a little kid. Like my parents would always, when I was really little, they would have these like they would get me and my brother a suitcase, a new suitcase, like little kid suitcase each year, and fill it with toys. And so we'd always look forward to the American trip, and we get it as soon as we get to the airport. But also, that was before streaming services, and the best part about the international flights is you get all the movies on your seat that are still in the cinema. So I remember when I was little, I used to
Mm,
look forward to like the flight from. We used to go to Fiji first, but from Fiji to LAX, that was super super long, like over 28 hours. But you can get a few movies in that time. So that's what I did, just stacked it all with the new movies coming out.
I mean, that's probably a cool
But
childhood memory. I would be
yeah.
excited about that too.
I got a
oh,
random question for you. Bill, when you're in Fiji, is Fiji water just called water?
hilarious.
Because
Actually,
we
that's
we spent a lot of money on that. I feel like that's a real thing, you know? They
yeah.
take
No,
it for
that used
granted.
to. I used to chuckle about that because, like, the about what you're saying about traveling. That I really do am grateful for that. The perspective I got culturally and stuff was awesome. But yeah, that's funny because Fiji water to me, the first time I saw that and drank it was in Fiji. And then after that is when I saw it be everywhere else, and it was so
Wow.
confusing. But
It's kind of a
but
phrase though. I like
Did
that.
it start in Fiji, or is it an American company just using their name?
I'm not sure. They definitely have them stocked over there. I'll tell you that.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know. I'll have to research that as you continue to
that's
talk.
cool.
Could have been an acquisition or something. But yeah, I'm not even sure if the water comes from there, doesn't it?
No
But it'd have
chance.
to. You can't.
Couldn't
I
tell
don't
you.
know. But yeah, that's a bit about my traveling. Like that was one kind of thing that defined a lot of my early life was the traveling. Like every year went international at least 2 times because my dad does a lot of international business and
Mm,
stuff. So that was sort of just a norm for me. Like I don't want to say I took it for granted, but like the similar thing with the perspective of being tucked away, I didn't know that that wasn't normal. So that's something that I am excited to get back to once I graduate this semester. Just as you're talking about Europe, I really want to jump over there, tick that one off, maybe buy a farm in Sicily. We'll see.
Ooh, look
ooh.
at this. Dreams already happening.
So whoa. What's up with that? Give us a little side here. That was very specific.
Yeah, that is very specific. Why Sicily and why
Farm?
a farm?
Why a farm? What kind of
Well, it's
farm?
like, who knows? Well, pretty much like I want to just get a sick piece of land and invest in that pretty early on. And having a farm, I grew up around farms. My little
Hmm.
town was very agricultural. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate the freedom that you have with your own land and just that lifestyle. Um, and Sicily is sick and it's beautiful and it has dope beaches and dope food and dope people and awesome community. And land is not that expensive over there. So it's like if I had 150 grand or to like 250 grand lying around, why not throw it in there? And it's like no matter what happens, can fall back to my farm in Sicily, and it's kind of chill.
So where did you get this perspective? Because if you haven't been there, like where are you learning this? That, I mean, you can look up land prices, but just good people, good food, like do you have family from there or close friends from there?
I don't. In Australia, it's an interesting culture because it's similar to the US in being super multicultural, but we're much younger. So
Mm,
there's less sort of like the patriotism or like everyone defined as American. It's still I'm Australian, but I'm Italian, or I'm Australian, but I'm Vietnamese, and it's very much so like that. So a lot of the people that I grew up with that had Italian blood still had really heavy ties to Italy. Like
mm,
for instance, the
Interesting.
language class that I took in elementary school was Italian, um, which don't ask
okay.
me to speak any of it because I don't remember it. But but
No
I don't
worries.
know. I just love Italian food. I think Italy and Sicily have like that sort of big family culture thing and loud and boisterous. And I guess that's something that I haven't had. That's something we can get into as well. Just the
Oh yeah.
what comes along with having a traveling family and that sort of thing. But yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe like I'll go there and I won't even like it. But in my mind right now, like
That's cool, man.
you
No, that's
gotta,
good.
yeah,
Dude, you have to
yeah.
have dreams. You
Let
have
me,
to have something to go
You
after,
got to.
and
You got to.
that's a good place to start, dog. I love it.
most
Have you
definitely.
seen Princess Bride?
It's a great movie.
I
I don't
really,
know.
when you say Sicilians like that, it just really makes me think of the guy with the poison when he's like, never try to trick a Sicilian. Inconceivable. Anyway, sorry. It
Oh
just
my gosh,
makes
dude!
me think of
But
that. Makes me think of that guy.
Bill, you have to watch
Hilarious.
Princess Bride. It's dated for sure, but it's one of the best movies that's ever been created.
Yes, but there's some
That's
major Sicilian pride in that movie.
awesome. Yeah, that's the sort of movie I like. I hate not purposefully, but I just can't. I'm not tricked by anything that's romanticized or glorified. I really just like the gritty stuff, and especially the old stuff because there wasn't as much sort of everything had to not be so much pure, but you couldn't say for a horror movie you couldn't have as many like computer generated effects to sort of
Oh
trick people
yeah.
into thinking. Yeah, the storyline and narrative have to be super creepy, like
Yep.
Silence of the Lambs, things
Yes.
like
You got
that,
to go
where
full Alfred Hitchcock for sure. No, I'm with you, man.
full
Hell
It's
Rear
yeah.
good.
Window. I love Rear Window.
Yep.
That's a good one
There we
by
go.
Alf.
We're talking.
Have you ever seen Requiem for a Dream? That's a real mind fuck.
Bro, you had to go there, Mike.
I'm
Thanks.
sorry. Whenever I talk about just like movies that really have a wild story, that one, it's just basically about being hooked on heroin and hardcore drugs and what it does to your life. And it's a wild one. But
Well,
yes.
on that note, let's talk about children. No,
So moving forward, that where were we at? We were talking about you were traveling. You grew up in a very very small time. Talk to us about your kind of family
yeah.
and any brothers or sisters. How was your relationship with your parents? You know, did they help you kind of mold the mind you have today? Would love to hear about that.
Most definitely, most definitely. I've actually been pondering that in terms of um, just how behavior and interest comes so heavily out of what your parents sort of create environmental wise, and I feel like a lot of my entrepreneurial stuff has come out of that with my dad. But yeah, I have an interesting family dynamic. I love my family. I got my mum, who's my favorite person in the entire world. Been really, really close with her. Been through the trenches with her throughout my path. But she just recently we got a. She's Australian for context. My dad's American. That's where the split
Okay.
comes in, and just got her in a couple years ago. Moved over here, which was a huge thing for her.
Oh, cool.
And that was special. And she's got a dream house up in Montana now, so that's awesome. And my brother is a year and a half older than I am. He's doing a similar thing to me. He actually uh, just started a solar company, but it's some new take on a solar company. It's interesting. We went to college for opposite things and then switched in terms of where we're going in business, which is funny. But he's awesome. He's a very very interesting person. So he's still here in Austin, Texas. So he's pretty close to me still.
Okay.
Um, my dad is based. I'm actually not sure where he's based. He kind of jumps around. But I have an interesting relationship with my dad. I was very very close with him growing up. Then about when I was about 14, he moved over here for business. And
Mm,
then there's not much of a relationship after there. Um, and that's interesting. I've thought about a lot in terms of where I pull my motivation and
Hmm.
just being transparent with myself, thinking about how that affects what I'm doing now.
right.
And I think
Sure.
I get a lot of drive from it, honestly, in terms of just the the drive to prove my financial sort of independence and things along those lines, which it's not necessarily healthy or unhealthy. I'll just acknowledge that it's there. But that's a whole interesting one there. Then I've got a
Yeah.
sister who's the last one still in Australia, and she's living in Melbourne. She's got a German boyfriend, and uh, I don't even know how old she is. She's like 26 or 27, I think. Um, but yeah, so we're all spread out. We got me and my brother in Texas. My dad is, I think he's in Florida right now. He's got some show in Miami or something. Um, and then my mum's in Montana, and my sister's still in Australia. So all over the place.
Shit, man, you
Yeah,
are spread out.
for sure.
You say something interesting about your dad, though. I actually won for as young as you are. The fact that what you said was really mature, which is like whether I think it's healthy or unhealthy, I recognize that and I take it for what it is. So that's very
Mhm.
impressive. Maddie, I felt like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, well, so let's talk about that, right? So first of all, did you come up with that realization? Was that through did you have like a hark moment when you realized, holy crap, I'm competitive because of this? Is it, is that where that drive is? Because the reason I mention it is because you said around 11th grade, state record champion. Um, is that where maybe some of that started? Was this kind of like to validate what was going on there? Was this something that you did, or where did it come from?
Yeah, there's a whole rabbit hole we can go down there. Honestly, the thing about so I get a lot of these thought patterns and dig into a lot of this with my experiences that I've had with psychedelics and such. They were a huge catalyst for that
Ooh.
and for me.
Okay,
So
okay,
that's an interesting road we can go down. But that's played a
yeah,
lot in my brother and my even our relationship with one another. But yeah, just perspective and critical thinking and trying to get down to the fundamentals. I look at everything. My perspective is sort of shaped in a scientific point of view,
hmm
to the point where I like breaking things down to fundamentals and objectives. And I think that's a healthy way to look at stuff. Because in reality, I'm also minoring in philosophy, so I metaphysical stuff I'm really fascinated by. But
yeah,
I think, yeah, I think it's super fascinating just digging deeper to those little behaviors and ticks that you have and really just mapping out what it means and just thinking about stuff like that. Just going a little bit deeper into the whys and hows behind who I am.
it's fascinating. So first of all, we've actually had projects on the show, and that was like really a big part of what they were doing in their project. And again, there's a lot of talk around this subject, and it's it's weird because we have to be kind of tough what we say because I don't want to necessarily promote some, it's kind of like saying for entertainment purposes only, do your own research,
Hmm.
not investment advice.
Right, right.
Obviously we're not doctors, folks. But what's interesting is there are a lot of doctors who are finally able to acknowledge that some of the initial research into psychedelics was based in science, not just a bunch of people looking to have, a journey. Um, and that the science is real. And you created a perfect metaphor. Like in hard sciences, we have to break things down to their fundamentals to understand them. Right? It was like that's why unlocking the human DNA sequence was such a big deal. It tells us a lot about who we are. How do we do that mentally, right? This is the challenge that a psychiatrist has. And there's something to be said about some of these basically experiences and drugs that kind of let people get out of their own way. I don't know, Mike, what do you
Hmm.
think?
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm actually I'm more listen. There are many ways to get the mind altered.
Sure.
My mind was altered by not a psychedelic, really alcohol. I think did a bit the toll on my mind. I haven't really dabbled in a ton of the psychedelics, but I'm extremely interested. And actually, after my traumatic situation with mental health, I probably won't ever do one because I'm like, I don't want to open up any more cans of worms that I've already opened up. I cannot go back down that dark journey, but I am
Yeah.
fascinated to hear what Bill has to say about it because I do think there is
Yeah.
absolutely a healing element because it's just like any other part of the body. We also understand that the brain can grow and evolve as well and heal, and I think this might be one of the ways to do it.
Well, let's to share this part, Bill, and then I want you to kind of give me your thoughts on this. Listen, man, if you broke a bone when you were 13 years old and it never healed correctly,
Right?
right? And you waited till you were 40, and then all of a sudden in some random X-ray, somebody's like, this bone's broken, but we're gonna have to do like surgery now to fix it. And
Yeah.
your muscles and your ligaments and all this stuff has changed to accommodate
Uh-huh.
a broken bone, right? And now
Uh-huh.
it's a big deal to fix it. Where I'm
Uh-huh.
getting to with this is that at a very young age, for you to have the foresight and say, I want to get to the bottom of this. I mean, bro, you just talked about unlocking a thing that has to do with your dad and you're 23, right?
Hmm.
Bro,
Like
that's light
Mike and I had
years.
our midlife, dude. Yeah, I was freaking at the end of my 30s having these like truth bombs in my life, you know.
Right, right.
So the thing is like we're finding the broken bone now. You're sitting there and in a much more pliable moment, saying something's wrong. Let me address it and addressing it. That I think there's something there. Tell me, kind of dive into that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually it's fascinating the way that you put it like that because it's kind of like just the fact that I did it in a more plastic time where I had more flexibility in
Yeah.
terms of my mind, and those thoughts hadn't been dug down so deep. Yeah, that's interesting. And it's interesting what you say about how it relates to your mental health and just how that relates to what you were saying, Mikey, because it's like last semester, so last year around like October through December, I had really gnarly mental health just based on spreading myself too thin in working
Right.
in Web3 and the perspective, like the comfortability that I have in myself with like these chemicals now. It's like that allows me to get down to the fundamental point. So in the upswings and downswings through that time, I could pull back out of perspective and say, all right, I'm not in a hole that I can't dig out of. It's just a down week. Last week I felt amazing. This week I feel really bad. It's all just like um, sort of a graph, sort of just swinging up and down, and then just that ability to sort of step back out of my perspective, which is what I've derived from that was so huge. Like that was the biggest eye-opening thing. The first time I did it was for the first time in my life, it ripped me out of looking through my biased perspective. Every relationship I've ever
Yes.
had, everything I've ever done has been through my eyes with that emotional sort of pull on it.
Hmm.
And this sort of pivoted me 90 degrees so that I could look at everything within my life, but just in a completely objective view and be like, wow, I'm being like digging my heels in over here about something that is like actually hurting me. And that was just
Wow.
super big. And then from there, like the best way I look at these things in a biochemical perspective, every single drug, including alcohol, has a purpose. You just need to use it the right way. Like one thing Joe Rogan always says is like you could give someone a hammer and they can build a house, or they could like smash their fingers, like if they're just being an idiot. And it's like it's all behind the purpose that you're going in with. And when it's healing and being like introspective and really trying to get down to those things, there's no better catalyst other than meditation and stuff. That has been something huge as well.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, and so that's what man, I mean, bro, I wish Maddie and I say this often to younger guests on the show. I wish I was thinking like you when I was your age because I was using alcohol for the wrong reasons, right? I was just trying to forget it all and bury it deeper down inside. But you say something interesting there, which is like it might be interesting going into it now with the mindset that like I think I've uncovered most of the things and I'm using it for a healthy perspective. Because the other thing that you said, which is so important, and I still struggle this all the time, is you read, especially people like us, right? We want to build a business, we want to be the best versions of ourselves every day. And you read all these books and you see, you read and you inherently know what you need to do to be great, but you just can't be that every day. And it's still, I struggle with it. It's still so hard to just not beat yourself up about it, right? Because every day I feel
Hmm.
like I should be up at 6 a.m., ran 4 miles, done a bunch of meditation, planned my day out by the minute before it's 8 a.m., right? And it's like, well, that's just not possible to do every day.
Yeah.
100%. 100%. And that's one of the things with it too. It's funny because it's like I feel like that was the birth of a lot of my scientific thinking and just thinking about the world in that different way. But it's like we are all just humans in my perspective with all this context for my background in terms of my view. We're all humans. I mean, animals in a way, and that's the way that I look at everything in that sense too. And so, yeah, having that perspective and being able to give yourself um, just that breathing room in your mind is so big, especially in a space like this where it's so fast paced. I
Yeah.
think that perspective is one of the most important things that you can carry.
100%,
That's so true,
man.
man. I love it.
100%. Uh,
So
Go
so
ahead, Manny.
yeah, so dad was a big influence, but you recognize that, and kind of in a very non-judgmental way too, by the way, saying whether good or bad, you recognize that. Uh Talk about like, because you did hit a couple other things. You grew up, you said farm life had an influence to you. That's was
Hmm.
part of the Sicily thing. Uh Talk about maybe the influence of farm life being in that more rural atmosphere, and how that shaped you, and maybe family life and whatnot, because you also then went to Montana, which for America terms is also pretty dang
Rural.
rural in terms of
Hmm.
and so it's kind of like that you've been in pretty remote areas a good chunk of your life. How has that been in terms of how you think that's affected you?
That's interesting. I think honestly, like it all feeds back to that perspective word for me. Like they're just here, and I'll give some context to my life with this. So it's like I grew up rural Australia, um, very agricultural middle class, and then I moved to the east coast of Australia and attended. Well, that year it was the number one private school in Australia, and so it was essentially like going to some
Mhm.
Beverly Hills school where like
Right.
the celebs had their kids, but it was like Australian celebs, and
Got it.
that perspective change was huge. But just seeing that no matter where you are at what level within society, everyone is the same. They all want the same things. They all act the same. No one is better or worse than one another. That was really, really eye opening. Um, and I feel like something that comes along with traveling and with my dad is along that path when I moved from rural Albany to high end Melbourne and then over here to college, I feel like I've been running away from something, but also chasing something in terms of what I want. But what I found there, and actually I'd learned the biggest lesson from it when I was living in the regional and rural places, is that it's the people that are around you. And that comes back to the primal stuff about humans is we're a communal species. And that's where the true happiness is derived from.
Yep.
Um, and an interesting perspective that I've been thinking about with my dad in terms of that is maybe that's something I'm chasing in terms of this entrepreneurial and be different and go down a different path sort of mindset. Maybe the Sicily thing. That's what I'm imagining there. It's like this thing in my head that I'm wanting, but I put a different sort of frame around it, which is an interesting thought. Um, but yeah, I remember talking to in 11th grade. It was my last year in West Australia in a little town, and my mum had moved over to America for 2 months to move my brother into college. So I lived with one of my homies. And I remember asking his parents, I was like, how because I couldn't understand my friends because they wanted to live in Albany for the rest of their life, and I was like, how can you be happy growing up in such a small enclosed place, living there your whole life, and not going off and seeing the world? Like, how do you not have that wonder? And then they were like, well, that's exactly what we did, and we're extremely happy, and to us it's because we have each other and we have our family here and stuff. And at that moment, honestly, in my head I was like, well, that's stupid, because I didn't have the perspective of moving. But then
Yeah.
moved to Melbourne, moved here, and yeah, I just always come back to that moment and think, wow, that was pretty powerful, how someone told me exactly the lesson that I needed to learn, like right before I left to go and learn it. That's just a interesting memory that you unlocked.
Yeah.
Dude,
That's fascinating.
that is powerful as well. I mean, I always say that too. Like one of the reasons that I am here today with the right mindset was, fortunately, I had surrounded myself with great people and friends and family to get through the tough times, and it's critically important. I think it's, in my mind, impossible to do it by yourself, and you need to figure that out. Hopefully sooner than later, how important that is, because if you don't, it makes your life a lot more tough.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and also go ahead, Bill.
Well, I was just going to say that's something, like this perspective that I have now. Coming to Texas was really eye opening for me because it's very traditional down here, and because I'm just live here year round. I go to my
Mhm.
pledge brothers and my girlfriend's house for like holidays, like Thanksgiving and Christmas, and they're
Yeah.
all just massive families, just like six aunties, or like a bunch of, just so many people, like 20 to 30 people at each meal. And that's like,
Yeah.
for me growing up, it was my dad and my mum and my brother, because
Yeah,
my sister was off at a boarding school. So that's interesting.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Maddie, go ahead.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, so the other thing I think is I found fascinating there is just to recognize, first of all, at that age, you asked your friend's parents the question in the first place, right? Asking questions is a massive part of, the curiosity is what leads us to new conclusions and helps us learn. A lot of people would just, because you said you thought that was stupid, right? But you have to recognize most people wouldn't have asked. They just would have assumed it was stupid and moved on. You know,
Hmm.
you asked, got an answer, and that puts you in a reference frame to then go back and chew on that and be like, huh, there's some validity here. You know what I mean? And I think that introspection seems to be a theme so far we keep getting from you, and I'm curious about that. So tell us about Montana, man. Montana is a wild place. Where in Montana were you going?
So it's a little town in between Bozeman and Billings.
Hmm.
I was actually just up there over winter. It's beautiful, beautiful place. Just
Oh yeah,
you got the mountains surrounding you. Especially
Hmm.
coming up from Texas, it's a nice
Yeah.
thing to get out of flatland. But no, that's interesting. It's my dad's side of the family, mostly based up there.
Okay.
Even though that my mum's moved up there now, but yeah, he grew up in Billings, Montana. But
Hmm.
pretty much, my uncle lives up there, and he's extremely successful, and so that's always just been sort of like a meeting, a center place for our family,
Hmm.
because we are so spread out. Everyone sort of has to travel to meet up, and so that's sort of been a central zone for meeting and stuff. But it's beautiful. They live literally right on the Yellowstone, so they have the river running like in their
Dude.
backyard, and so we just launch whitewater rafts off the riverbank in the backyard, and then go down, and then parents used to like pick us up a couple hours later in town where the river runs through. But yeah,
that's
that was,
so
That's
bitchin'.
wild. That's wild,
I
man.
think you asked about my rural sort of experience and how that's influenced me. I think
Hmm.
that plays heavily into the direction I went with my science, like my appreciation for nature, um, my appreciation for plants, and just all the cycles that like go on with there. That's something that has been a huge part of my life for the past couple of years. But like those experiences in Montana, like it's undescribable if you haven't been to like true wilderness before. But
Yeah.
just going somewhere where it's like, and that's a feeling that I really love, like just going somewhere where you're not, you're completely out of you lose all the anxiety of having society around you. Like you go out and it's just you and the trees. And
Yeah.
then now I have my
Mhm.
puppy, so my puppy's out there too. And I think like people look at trees as inanimate objects, and I think like this is a whole other thing because with my environmental science stuff, but it's like I don't feel lonely when I have big old trees around me. That's like the most presence I feel from an organism, I would say. When I'm in a big forest with just big old trees and everything's working in one, just the whole ecosystem, how it all flows together. That feeling when I go out like that, that's something special to me,
It's a
definitely.
f- it's a feeling of permanence, and I will say this: I'm not going to pretend that I have a ton of experience there, but I have been to the places you're describing, and it is a surreal feeling, and it feels like you hear these cliches. People like, I feel like I stepped out into a painting or something like that. I remember just the air, uh, the crispness of everything was
Hmm.
so different than what I was used to. Now, unlike you, certain anxieties went away. New anxieties, like there are literal grizzly bears everywhere here, and I'm like 10 hours away from anything like a Band-Aid. So, there was a different set of things, but there's no question there's a peace that comes over you, and it's really cool.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and your mom ended up there, right?
Yeah, she just got her own little hill up there, Sycamore Hill. She's got
There
a
you go.
beautiful, beautiful house. Now, that whole situation, she got 10 acres of forest now. She's got two dogs. Like, so this is a special
Mm,
story. 12th grade, my 12th grade, it was just me and mum at that point in Australia, and she was going through some stuff. Uh, and so that was a really, really tight bonding experience for us then, um,
that's cool.
because yeah, obviously it was challenging for both of us, and we just used each other sort of to lean off. Um, but that's when there was a lot of question around the American borders, and so she, a couple of years previous, had gotten rid of her green card because she thought we're going to all stay in Australia. Ended up not doing that. But then the process was there was so much more friction to get through, and not being able to be where her family was, like the idea of her being left alone in Australia, coupled with all the stuff she was going through, was just a really, really gnarly time for her. And she would write down her goals and aspirations and what she wants her future to be like in a little notebook, all the time. And I remember her reading me a page once, like it was obviously a special page because she'd put in a bunch of stuff together to like have a little plan. And she said, I wanna move to Montana, and get I want to move somewhere in the mountains and have a house where I can have, live with my dogs and they can run around, and it can be a place where you and Rick, who's my brother, can come up and like hang out and take mushrooms with your friends. And like I remember
Nice.
over this winter for Christmas, Rick and I went up, and it was the first time my mum, myself, and my brother had all been together in I think over a year, maybe nearly 2 years. And I just kind of realized like that was that coming to fruition. That was like the moment, and that was just
Yeah.
pretty awesome.
Dude,
Yeah.
that's so cool. And talk to us a little bit more about your mom because yeah, she's obviously very close to you. Do you think because of the turmoil and stuff you experienced there in high school, that's how what really got you close, or is there something about her that rubbed off on you that you think you are the way you are, or she helped mold your mindset? What is it there?
Oh, most definitely. She's my rock, or I like to say my eucalyptus tree. But no, like I, sh- it's just her nature. She's a physiotherapist. She's really smart. Went to college for like 8 years, did a couple of different things, but she's just sacrificial. Like she just puts everything on the line for like my brother and I. And I don't know, it's just one of those things where it's just mutual love that's so, so strong. Because I know that she would, and she has like literally thrown everything she has away to facilitate my brother and my flourishing and doing what we want to do. And that's always been her goal, is to take us through school and have a platform where my brother and I can go off into the world and do whatever we want to do. And it's really really cool, especially talking to her now as I'm about to graduate, just seeing the happiness that flows through her in terms of actually achieving those things. But she's just super super selfless. Cares, puts in so much effort. It's like one of those mums where like I'll text her about an idea, like I'll be like, I want to go to um, I'm thinking about like when I was doing wanted to do my minor in philosophy, I said I might do a minor in philosophy. Just texted her that randomly. The next day she sent me like 5 documents she'd laid out with like all the different things I needed to do. And she'd done everything she could from her end, but then she just laid out everything that she couldn't do that I had to do in a document and sent it over. And I was like, I haven't even decided that I want to do this yet. um, but yeah, she's special.
That's awesome.
That's an awesome story because I was like you were reminding me a lot of my mom too. Like there's just this incredible unconditional love, right? They'll do
Hmm.
anything to make sure that your life is better than what they experienced or just better because they love you that much. And it's interesting because my mom would my mom is the type of a mom where she would just be my cheerleader, but she wouldn't write me a 5-page document about what I needed to do. So it's like yeah, it's just my mom to the nth degree with a kind of educational perspective behind it. So that was cool to hear.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
fantastic.
think it was I think it was honestly like because we've talked about briefly the stuff with my dad. I think honestly, it's kind of like this is again in the objective sense, like not necessarily for happiness, not necessarily for success in terms of anything, but it's like those two, that dynamic between them. It's I think it honestly played out somewhat well in terms of having motivation and succeeding, or just what my brother and I are doing well in right now. Because I feel like too much of what she gave, you feel like things are meant to be given to you, and then too much of what my dad has, you think you don't deserve anything. So I think that middle
Ooh.
sort of give and take between them. That's one thing I've thought about where it's like my mum gives me the confidence and the belief that I have, whereas my dad gives me like the drive and sort of the discipline and motivation to want to go up and grab something.
Yeah.
So I think that
Yeah.
even though there's a lot of turmoil in between with the context of it, I think it's interesting how it played out like that.
No, and you're really forming a pretty detailed, vivid picture of why you are the way you are. So I appreciate opening up and sharing all of that. Maddie,
Of
anything
course.
before we kind of
Yeah,
move on a little bit? I mean, there's
yeah.
so much to unpack
I
here. I
there's
told you, Bill, we'll be able to talk for six
yeah.
freaking
We're
hours
gonna
if
have
you
to
want.
yeah, we're gonna have to eventually just call it to move on. But I think you hit you hit on something there, right? Which is that more and more research is coming out. Because, dude, raising kids is tough. I mean, there's people will sell you books on how to do it, but I'm not really sure how many people actually know. You know what I mean?
No
it's
one
it's
knows.
wild, and exactly right. But what we do seem to know, and I'm coming at this from a pure scientific and kind of analytical. What does the data show? What's fascinating is what you just described, which was a balance between essentially two types of mm, what would be the word? I'm going to say two types of love. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is there's like a
Hmm.
firm and then this like super supportive, I'll do anything. And that dynamic, what we are learning is how critical that is. And what's very hard to do is for one person to be both of those things. Not impossible.
Hmm.
People have done it. There's some amazing people out there. Um, but it's interesting to your point there that like, you know, as we're raised, we need both sides of that. And sometimes it comes from a mother at home and a coach in athletics or whatever, you know what I mean? Or sometimes and vice versa, right? My point is that like the balance of those two things when they are in balance is undisputably the single greatest advantage a child can have, period, case closed, according to all the research. And it's just
Hmm.
interesting because you just described essentially that exact thing, right? Which you nailed it. Like too much of one, too much of the other. But if you get it balanced, and who knows how to do that? I'm not even remotely prepared, equipped, or or qualified to speculate on that. Uh, we can just say that it's interesting because it seems to be very, very important. And yeah, it's just it's really cool. It's really cool. But there seems to have to be some type of a balance. You know what I mean? And you
Hmm.
hear that like, and it's Steven. I mean, I have friends who, the mom is the disciplinarian and the dad is the one that like, is the lovey and doting person, and vice versa. Or my point is I'm not saying what anything has to be. I just think it's interesting that the balance there is like even something that small children pick up on. I think that's really cool. That's
Hmm.
cool.
100%.
What are your thoughts there, Bill?
Um, yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think, oh, I just had one good thought. What was it?
Ooh, give it to us.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I've been thinking about that dynamic that you're talking about more recently, and also just the influence that your parents have in the way you think. And I think it honestly goes deeper than we even realize. Like
Yeah.
recently this year, I've just been critically thinking about stuff way more, and for some reason I jumped back to that. But I'm really one thing that shines through me that's clear is like I have uh, a natural tendency to lean towards being different and exclusivity and things along those
Mhm.
lines. And I really like anything that's like falling into path. I fight against it for some reason, and
Mm,
it's funny
Mm.
because I've always thought that was just a natural thing within me. But then thinking back, that is 100% the ethos my dad put off for like all the time. And then I'm just have like these flashbacks of seeing my mum was one of those mums that had like a lot of different like Buddhist statues and different little messages on things. And she
Yeah.
the one like common message between all of them was like, don't follow the worn path, go off trail and like make your own
right,
path and stuff like that. So
right.
just little
Yeah.
things like that where like core fundamental beliefs that I always thought was sort of embedded within my genetics or whatnot,
Yeah.
I see and I can recognize that that has sort of been littered throughout me from being a blank canvas up until who I am now. And that's just an interesting realization I had.
For
Just that
sure.
Oh,
how
dude,
much influence they have. Yeah.
it's massive. I mean, it's your formative years when your brain is really trying to figure out life. That those moments matter. Matt can tell you. I mean, we offline, we all three of us could go and tell you exactly probably why the way we are based off of how our parents are treating our upbringing. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
it is who you are. And one of the things I wanted to touch on too, though, and I think Maddie was talking about is like this balance, right? Like it's the same way when you're old though too. There's this necessity of balance, right? Like we hear all the time that to be a successful billionaire, you shouldn't sleep. Well, we all now know that sleep is critically important to being healthy and
Hmm.
successful, right? And it's so difficult. And I don't know. What do you guys think? Is the reason why it's so difficult in this day and age is because there's just an overwhelming information of telling you what you think you should do? On why it's hard to be balanced. I can't figure. I think about it a lot, and I don't know if it's just myself um
I think
being
there's
obsessed with things, or go ahead, Bill. I don't know what the answer is.
I think there's some sort of like formal structure behind that's sort of somewhat presented us, not directly, but like how we should be, the sort of thing that we should follow. And I don't think it's necessarily rigged to open us up in that way and be fully balanced. I think it's sort of cumulative action where it's well the core incentive behind it isn't balance.
Mhm.
And I think it's interesting that you make that point because that is 100% one of the biggest lessons I pulled out of working in Web3. And that sort of is even more saturated in terms of the amount of data and information that's thrown at you all at once. And it's interesting just this is another one of my sort of core fundamental beliefs and about science and just the way I see the world. And I see the world basically, I see us as monkeys, and we're too dumb to comprehend very complex things. So, what science is is we take any phenomena that we've sort of identified and we break it down to the most fundamental and comprehensible levels. And I think with stress and with anxiety and with mental health, it's a buildup of complexity and a lack of balance. And that was a huge thing for me last year when I was going through it, was finding balance where I was oversaturated and sort of spread too thin. And what was the other buzzword I used? There was balance and
Mm, I am not sure.
slipped off the top of my mind.
No,
But
that's all good.
It
I
was
mean, I
balance
understand. I
and
understand what you're saying. Is the fact that you were talking about uh the visualization that we're monkeys and there's just too much complexity for us to handle, and that is where anxiety, and the things that we're not handling are the anxiety, the
mhm,
depression, the mental illness. So I'm not sure
that
what
came
else
from
you
the
were talking,
complex.
or
Yeah,
came
that was
from
a
the
spawn.
complexity.
Yeah,
mhm.
I'm not sure, man. I'm not sure.
yeah.
Oh yeah, no
Well,
stress. I was going on a tangent anyway. We need to pull it
No,
no,
back.
no,
you're
no.
good, man. I
This
mean,
is a
you know,
fantastic
my
tangent. Maddie,
yeah,
what is
my
your answer to my question that I don't have an
my
answer to?
answer is I think that we've created a world, whether it be through marketing or whether it be through pressures and social paradigms, where the finish line looks good, but it's completely out of balance, right? And I'm just going to use something simple that we can objectively say: social media, right? What percentage of posts do we see that people post that show something good in their life versus something awful and tragic and embarrassing in their life, right? People post the best. Is that a balanced view of how life is? No. But what do we do as creatures? We look at that and compare our worst to their best, and then we get out of whack, right? And you can see this with anything, fitness, right? You pick up any fitness magazine and you're looking at the first of all the top quarter 1% of fit people. And second, you're seeing them after they've gone through an insane cut phase, after they're dehydrated. There's a whole trick to the trade to get those photos ready, even outside of Photoshop, right? And then you see these people, and it's like, you think they walk around all day like this, and they don't. They walked around that for about 6 hours for a photo shoot, and then that's about all you can do that stuff for. You have to like
Right.
eventually drink water. Um, and so, it's these unrealistic goals, but the problem is we strive to be out of balance all the time because that's what we're being told we need to be. And I think that a lot of it, when you talk about it, Mike, what is going on, I just think a lot of it is that, you know, we're shooting for a goal when the truth is that the happy, balanced life isn't really spectacular and sexy to see. It's not really that marketable, you know the happy family at home with the kids that are playing sports that are doing good, and maybe they're not superstars, but the parents are supporting them and everything's in balance. Who wants that story? Who wants to watch that sitcom? Not many people, right? But it's the truth is that, that's where a lot of people tend to truly find the joy and peace in that balance of life. And so I don't know, that's my take on it.
No, I like
I
that
That's my
think
take.
perspective. Go ahead, Bill.
that's a really important point. I think that you said at the end about just how it's not that much of an exciting life. And I think that's one thing that I've talked to one of my friends about recently, in terms of like there's different people that play different roles within society. And
Yep.
with the context of all my parents' stuff, it's like the result of who our parents make us sort of push us into different roles within society. But
Hmm.
the ones that making those giant strides and achievements that you talk about, if you ask them, I'd say most of those people aren't happy because they're not balanced. Like you look at
Correct.
someone like Elon Musk, he hates the fact that his mind is so active and then it works so much, but he feels some sort of responsibility to channel that
Hmm.
into like the betterment of humankind and such. And I think that's
Yeah.
one thing that isn't really put on blast is the the back end of all that stuff, and just how those people that aren't balanced, that are pushing themselves so far in one direction, that lack of balance actually pulls from the balance of life where happiness sort of sits.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
and So I think, and that's sort of one thing that I've recognized. Like, I don't have that central family. Like, that's one thing is coming out of college now and looking where I want to go. It's like I don't have a central home. And the way I think about stuff and the way I want to do stuff is clearly different to my peers that are around me. And then so I could fight against that, but I'm also sort of recognizing that like maybe just the way I've been brought up and the way I've been shaped, it's put me into maybe a more niche or different role. And then like it's different, but just lean into that and
Yeah,
maybe there's the potential or capability to do something good and spread something.
Yeah, man.
Whether or not
for
it
sure.
comes to full circle to full happiness and whatnot. But yeah, I think that's a really important point you made.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. All right,
Yeah.
I say, well, go ahead, Mike, if you have anything, but
No,
then I
I
would
was
say
just
let's
gonna
move
add,
into
like,
episode 2.
I mean, and my answer was, I just want to pose the question to is, but like, I agree. It's really the technology and all. It's just the mass media, man. It's just totally. I don't think people talk enough about how the information age has just drastically changed how humans
Huge,
work. It's one of the
huge.
biggest, if not the biggest thing that's ever hit the human race as the way that we think and operate. And it's just starting. That's the crazy thing, right? We're talking about Web3 and metaverses and stuff, right? Like that over the next 2 to 3 decades, some crazy ass shit's gonna happen. And we're here,
Hmm.
Hmm.
and all we do know is that, this show, why we're on having the conversations we're having, is if we lose this, bro, we lose everything. And I don't want that to happen. So,
Well, you could certainly say we lose our humanity, at least
yeah.
as we know it.
And that's
So,
that's
yeah.
pretty much everything to me.
And then
Yeah.
we need Wally to come through.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, let's move forward. This is, I mean, fantastic conversation, Bill. We are on a freaking roll now. So before we get to Web3, any kind of like, I'm really interested to hear how you got published, maybe why microbiology just a little bit more, and then we can roll into the Web3 side of things.
Cool. Yeah, we haven't even really got to America yet, so let's dig in there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's do it. Let's do it.
But yeah, so pretty much the backstory to that is my brother was over here. I'd come over and visit him a couple times when I was 16 and 17, and he was in college. And going to another culture and not just being a tourist but immersing, that was so sick.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
especially with the fraternity and the structure of college over here is very different to Australia. It's pure education, whereas here there's that community aspect that comes along with it.
Yeah.
And I wanted that as an experience. So I was in for a double degree over in Oz for chem and international business, but last second decided to jump over. And yeah, went to I go to Texas A&M. Obviously, a pretty good agricultural school, but
Hmm.
just the reason I actually got into, so I've been into biology forever, but the reason I got into microbiology is actually because of psychedelics. Because of psychedelics, a classic like mushroom thing, and then just well, taking mushrooms and thinking about mushrooms and all that stuff. I just got fascinated by mushrooms. And
I love
then
it.
there's a dude named Paul Stamets who's he's like a very famous mycologist. That's someone that studies fungi and mushrooms, and he went on Joe Rogan, and I heard just how unexplored and misunderstood the whole field was, and that really fascinated me. The whole thing of being different, going down a different path, exclusivity, that all played in there. Um,
Yeah.
and then so worked at the third largest. This could have been something for my intro. So I worked for 2 years at a plant. It was called the Texas Plant Disease Diagnostic Lab. So essentially, it was the emergency room, but for plants. And so people, especially like
Interesting.
farmers, who would have like a crop with a disease, they would send a sample in, and essentially, I would start at a microscope with just the plant. There was this whole process. It was actually fun. It was kind of like detective work. You go in and you got to find where the symptoms are. From there, you could find where the actual like point of growth of the fungi is, and then you got to find the spore, crush it open, see the shape, and then put that to a species. And there's a whole
That's
bunch of different
wild.
tests and stuff. But yeah, that was my first research, and I did a first report on sesame. Um, with I won't. It was on bipolaris and Colototricum, which are two different fungal pathogens, and essentially I proved that they'd come to Texas for the first time. But the thing was, is that I wanted to do beneficial research on fungi, not necessarily pathogens. And then just being a sociable person, that's one thing I sort of did was like every class I took, the professors at where I'm at like super, super high degree. Like my biotechnology professor who I got really close with is literally a billionaire because he has like 18 records for the most efficient biomethane and bioethane and stuff. But then people in
Jeez.
class don't know that. It's hilarious because he would sneeze and stuff and people would laugh. I'm like, you don't realize how much of a beast this dude is. But that's sort of what
Yeah,
I did to get these opportunities was I just went and started. That's one thing that I really take on is treat everyone like a person no matter where they are in society. And that was one of the lessons I pulled from moving around. But
I love it.
treating these professors like people and talking to them about what I was passionate about that sparked their passions up in a conversation just made it not a professor student relationship, but a person, people that share a passion. And then it's really easy to get your foot in the door for opportunities then.
Right.
So through him,
Love this.
yeah, through him, I met his wife, who I did research for, Dr. Dye, and that's who I got published for. But that was research on finally the benefits of fungi. But this was a massive level up. I was doing graduate, so the research that I was published for was actually like post grad research, but I'm still in school, so that was like a huge opportunity for me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was essentially using different species of mushrooms to break down microplastics and oil and gas and different pollutants in the soil and water. So, say there's an oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, release this fungi out there, and then they they eat up all the contaminants, but they don't just eat it and clean it. They actually like convert it back into nutrients that can be used by plants and animals. So it brings the biodiversity back into
Mm,
the area. Um,
Interesting.
so it's really, yeah, really a like super super sustainable thing. It's like a internal uh, machine. Like you don't have any inputs or outputs. You just drop them in there, and then it does its job. Um, and and it's interesting because this that can honestly summarize all that, and then that something I'll go into here will can kick us into the Web3 journey. But any like thoughts on that stuff before I
yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. Uh, so what the first thing that you said that stood out is, and I guess I just want to ask again, where did you get that mindset? I mean, dude, when I was 19, I was thinking about how many
It's
beers can
wild.
I consume on a Thursday night, and if I'm in the double digits and blackout, it's been a good night. Uh, you're literally analyzing. I'm gonna treat my professors like people, realize he's a billionaire, and end up doing research for his wife, right? Do you think all of that success would have come? Do you boil that down into networking? That's one question, and then two, where does that like drive or thought process come from?
so I think there's sort of an underlying arrogance in my blood. And maybe not an
I
arrogance, but
love it.
sort of just like a self belief where it's like I honestly think that I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
In terms of I'm very I move through different interests, but I dive super deep into them when I do. And with that drive that I have for exclusivity, which actually plays into my life a lot, um, I as soon as I enter something, I automatically start this comparison thing of people. I break it down into like levels and people who are above me, and I just want to like keep making up those ranks. And it's this funny thing because it's like you look at the level above and you glorify this individual and this person, and then I make it to their position, and it's like automatically, it's not even like really that much of a feeling. Like automatically, all that glorification and stuff is gone, and it moves up the next level. It's like it's sort of set just above my head. there's this level that I just want to like
Mm.
keep reaching for, and it doesn't come closer or go further. It's sort of just always there,
Interesting.
which
So
is something for my drive. Yeah.
I love
yeah,
it.
so
Go
two
ahead.
thoughts about that because I mean, that goes all the way back to kind of your thoughts about your dad and how that influenced you. But my question when you just say that is there a finish line for you, or do you think that's just going to forever always going to be it's never good enough? Like there's nothing to attain. There's no point where you're like I've arrived.
Yeah, that's sort of my recognition of community and family, where I think that that arrival is having that dynamic, having those people around you and that family around you, um, and just real depth in those relationships. And I truly think that is the meaning as a person, is to build up those and have that communal experience.
Yeah. Well,
But yeah,
the only
yeah,
reason
that
I say it because I
go ahead.
challenge you to because you just described you'll build it up in your mind as this goal, like you just said what your goal was, and then you get there and the goal doesn't feel like it's enough anymore, right?
Hmm.
And it gets trivialized. And I would just challenge you. I agree with you. I think a balance, the family, the community, having all of those things in your life is a fantastic goal. Just make sure you know to recognize it when you get there, so the
Hmm.
same thing doesn't happen. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
otherwise, it's just like we get caught in this race rather than enjoying the journey. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
100%. And that's something that I think about so much in terms of my experience in actually leaving places and leaving people. I've had to do that a
Yeah.
lot throughout my life, and especially now coming to the end of college and being so consumed in this work and not spending as much time with the people around me. It's like having that past experience of like really wanting to get out and get to that next thing, but then also about having that balance of appreciating who's here and what's there. And every time I move, it's I that gets that lesson digs deeper into me, because it's like you look
Mm,
back and you look back at the things you really appreciate.
Right.
But also I think that's a powerful tool as well. And that's something that I tell my friends here in Texas, where it's like it's very nuclear in terms of barely anyone moves away, barely anyone goes international, in terms of traveling and stuff. And one thing I say to them is, if you go away, it makes you look at the things that you really, really appreciate about a place and about people, and then you can come back and just, without that sort of filtered sense of this is my norm, you can point
yeah.
out the things that really matter to you in an individual place. And I think that's
Absolutely.
pretty powerful in itself.
Yeah. And I want to add on to what Maddie said too, is because I actively work on this too, and with someone with your motivation, like you said you have too, it is, and I know Maddie and I are right on this one. As much as you can, you have to appreciate the daily, because there's miracles every day, right? And if you can actually appreciate the miracles that happen on a daily basis, there's a level of happiness that you can acquire without doing that, right? And I'll use the example of us as midlife crisis. Maddie and I are frustrated as hell knowing that we think our content and our podcast is top notch, but we don't have the hundreds of thousands of followers that, you know, we will eventually get,
Mhm.
but don't have now. But what I do is I constantly remind myself that at every podcast that goes by, it makes me a better person because I learn a new perspective and I grow just that much more on a daily basis. So just
Mhm.
nuanced views like that are massively important for a happiness and just growth in general, and to not get too caught up in that I'm never good enough, or there's always a way to level up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%, and I appreciate that, and I also think about that a lot too, and back to what you were saying, Maddie, like in terms of that family thing being my goal, I honestly have sort of created the separation where it's like I recognize that as being one of the key sources of happiness, like pure happiness
Mhm.
in what it is
Mhm.
as being a human being. But I don't think that's necessarily my goal, because the one thing about right now is like I look at that and I recognize that in an objective standpoint, but like I don't want that right now.
Yeah.
I want to go and and be like, right now what I really really want is to not have any strings attached whatsoever, and that's part of this web3 journey, is like
Yeah.
this will facilitate the ability for me to go to Sicily, and I could tell no one if I didn't want to, and it wouldn't matter, because it's like I can be where I want and do what I want to do wherever, and that's sort of a result of being tied down in Texas for so long because of COVID and such, where it's like I came here as a traveler, and this is the least amount of traveling I've done in my life in a culture that I'm not necessarily familiar with.
Mm.
And I don't know how long I need that freedom feeling for. Maybe it's a week, maybe it's a month, maybe it's 5 years, but it's like that's my first goal when I finish, is just, and that's everything that I'm doing right now, is making sure that I'm not tying myself down with anything, but also taking this beautiful opportunity that's never been there before, where I can be somewhat self-employed and travel wherever and just have a Wi-Fi connection and sustain myself, which is
I love it.
an
I get it.
unreal
I get it.
opportunity.
Hell yeah,
It's
man.
Um,
almost like, yeah, it's like true freedom. I hear you. I hear you. Or I should say more freedom than
mhm.
but one other real quick thing I wanted to highlight, man, I thought was really cool, which is I've said before, like going back, knowing what I know now, do I think that going to university would be critical? And my thing is this: if somebody wants to learn a trade, a profession that requires it, of course, you're going to be a lawyer or a doctor, of course, that's a no-brainer. But there's a lot of people going out chasing degrees thinking that it somehow leads to success, as if somehow
Mhm.
getting those credits are going to make the difference. And the reason I emphasize this is because you demonstrated this. Is I push back on that. I think that it can be valuable, but the networking, if I would have been able to go back now and think about the insane network I could have built while I was in college, rather than just focusing on class, right? The truth is this: I spent a lot of time and energy trying to get good grades. I could have spent a lot more of that energy passing, right? But getting to know the billionaire professor and creating an actual relationship there, because that guy is going to help me get a job way more than, you know, me going to a job fair and 50 other students have the same GPA as me.
Yep.
What differentiates? You know what I mean? You have a relationship. That's far more valuable to have. And I wish I would have learned that younger, how powerful those relationships are. Because just think about cultivating those same relationships through not just your professors, but the dean of the college that you're in, and or any others, because there's a lot of professional networks they have because of the research they do. Just spending time in that environment, meeting those people, is critically valuable, but rarely taught in college. You know what I mean? Like none of my professors pushed that, where that would have been more fruitful. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I I couldn't agree more. You're striking a very fresh chord with me there, and obviously it's fresh because I'm still in college, and
Yeah.
we align 1,000,000% on everything you said. It's I could go on forever about the different ways I think about that. It's just a resume boost. It's just the
Hmm.
name stamp and whatnot. But yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that's one thing that really led to that too. Is like I looked at myself and I did that thing where I pull myself out of my perspective, and I'm like, I'm sort of just going through the motions here, like everyone else doing this stuff. But like, there's a lot of money that's going into this. What value can I derive out of it, and what interesting stuff can I actually derive out
Yes.
of it? And coming along with that is just treating people like a person, and that's not just a tool. It's I'm actually genuinely interested as how did you actually become this successful. um, and that I think
Hmm.
that genuine interest is something important too, and that stems from my core curiosity, which is a huge thing with me. But like with him, for instance, he moved up to St. Louis to a new lab recently, but I just went and bought him a couple of things, and it's just those little things that mean so the most to people. I went in and gave him some memorabilia from Texas A&M and stuff, and then just had a chat with him and told him that I appreciated him and everything he did. And honestly, I think I was one of the only people that probably went through that day. and saw him on his last day, because just
Yeah.
he just keeps himself and whatnot. And
Yeah.
that was super special to him. And I got his phone number. He's given me a text since then. And like you said, that'll be a lasting relationship from a few
Yeah.
minutes and a few moments of effort and thought.
Yeah.
And who knows what that'll proliferate into in the future.
And I
And
love
and
it.
think about that. If you just would have gone into some new lab and tried to work your way up the ladder to get to somebody like that, it could take you a decade.
Yeah.
And you did it
Mhm.
with an afternoon and a thoughtful gift and a conversation. It's like, man, there's ways to skip the line, folks. They're really, and it's not cheating. It's just working smart. And I just think that there's a lot of lessons there. Mikey, thoughts?
Skipping. Yeah.
Bill skipping lines. That's my thought.
Dude, yeah, you're skipping big time lines, man, because you're having epiphanies at 23 that I had at
Yeah. Honestly, I have nothing
38,
to add.
and
I agree
it's
with
like
everything that you
it's
guys are saying.
unbelievable.
Bill, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I think skipping the line, that's another good sort of buzzword or buzz phrase or whatever for this. It's like, especially coming into Web3 and like just the deconstruction in my mind of all these huge conglomerates and governments and all these systems that are put together in such a complex way where it seems impeccable, but it's like, treat everything one relationship at a time and you can break through to the top. It doesn't matter. Um,
Hmm.
yeah,
A 100%,
that's
man. And that
Love
is our
this.
ethos here at Midlife, right? We
Yeah.
don't do shill spaces. We build long lasting relationships because we know how powerful that is, right?
mhm.
And so take us through, because this is interesting now. We've like set some fantastic foundations about who you are, why you believe. You're now in college, you're getting published, you're working with billionaires, but that all culminates usually into a degree and going getting a job in your field. But it looks like you're doubling down on a little bit of Web3. So take us from this current state that you're in, and why Web3? How did you find Web3? And we'll go from there.
Cool, cool. I'll give some context just to sort of wrap up the science
Yeah,
stuff in terms of when
absolutely.
I finished there. So I'd gotten published, but I'd been at this point I was sort of getting into the back end of Web3 in terms of working and stuff and dabbling there, building my infrastructure and foundation. So that was ramping up, but the not age old because it's crypto and crypto's new, but like the classic centralization issue where it's like, it honestly made me really pessimistic going up to that higher level lab and seeing the stuff that this billionaire doctor had been working on, what he published 20 years ago, that
Oh,
if was in use now, we would have none of the issues we have right now and all this stuff. And it's like, it was filled, the whole lab was filled with genuinely mind blowing stuff that you wouldn't even believe is real. They were turning like bark off trees into carbon fiber. Um, and just the most insane stuff. And just what I saw coming above through the pipeline in terms of what we needed to do was clearly fed through the government and through these larger corporations in terms of supporting the oil industry. And not that I'm against it, but it's like we're not even considering these things over here. And it just showed me even more so how everything is structured somewhat to be a money machine,
Hmm.
and that the
yep.
genuine intentions aren't there. And then that really, really just, for something that I'd had like as a goal for my entire life, I wanted to get published as a scientist for like as an older person. Obviously, it came earlier on, but then getting there and then being like, it felt so good, and I ticked the box because of like the qualification wise stuff. But I
Hmm.
can't really say I was happy with like the whole process, and decentralized science is a thing, and then that's something that I hope to sort of channel some of my influence and reach into building out more. But that, as well as all the stuff that I've sort of been going on with psychedelics and all this sort of just different thinking, just the philosophies of this space and everything that came along with it really, really captured me. And that another final piece of context on college, which sort of goes into why when I flipped the switch into being a hard worker, because I used to party really hard. I love EDM concerts and EDM festivals and stuff and just get gnarly at them. in in uh, sophomore year, I got arrested.
Oh.
We're in a college town, and it's the most BS thing. It wasn't BS. I should have gotten it. Whatever. It was a fake Australian fake ID. Anyway,
Mm.
college town cops. It's a massive revenue thing here, so it's like they throw stuff out like nothing. Anyway, I got 12 months probation for a fake ID, and plus I was sober, and they took me and locked me up for the night, which was kind of ridiculous. But um,
That's
and
wild.
yeah, so every day for a year, I had to wake up and call in and go in and do my drug test. For a whole year, I had to do that every day. And this is coming from someone that had been like smoking since they were young and um, like taking psychedelics all in a like, uh, I don't want to say smart, but just like in a genuine um,
Yeah.
context with all of them, but it's like that was just part of my life. And then going
Yeah.
to just nothing in a foreign country where I couldn't leave the state and had this control. That's when the Capitol Hill stuff was going on and all this. And I was like, this is who's telling me what to do. And that was a huge catalyst in terms of being like, all right, I need to facilitate freedom and sovereignty in my life where I'm not held down
Mhm.
by this BS. Um,
Yep.
and that was another massive catalyst in terms of the philosophies of Web3 sort of digging in
Yeah.
into my core beliefs. But yeah, it was an interesting start because I was the most basic gamer. I played like 2K and COD. My brother, I was the little brother that sat on the couch and watched his big brother play.
Right.
So my brother played like
Nice.
Destiny and all that stuff, and I would watch him. But I was the skateboarder, basketball player, surfer. Like I would be in the backyard learning to tray flip on my skateboard or something like that. And I'd had this built up thing in my mind because I'd gone through science for so long and society was so complex. And obviously, in my life, it's been very confusing, everything that's going on in society. So I was sort of just like, I don't want to deal with that stuff. Um, and so I'd never had a reason to sort of be curious about the financial world and these different sort of technology sectors and stuff, and even the art world. And I thought I despised them, but this really opened up these worlds and not even just individual, but the merge of both of them together. And
Yeah.
there was so much to dig into, especially with the new technology and just like with fungi, the unexploredness of it, like how there's so much
Hmm.
market to capture and knowledge to sort of be found out and different things to be made. And then the freedom that comes along with that too. They were just like, it sort of smacked me in the face, just the fact that, oh, these things, society, it's actually, and finance, it's actually not boring. It's fascinating how everything in the markets runs off psychology and speculation. And with macroeconomics, you can point at China reopening from COVID and you can put a bucket down like somewhere on the other side of the world and money will fall out of a crack into it. And it's like, I think all that stuff, like I just never been exposed to that. And then seeing that for the first time, it was just like,
Mhm.
dang, I was just like, let me dig in. And then that's how I became an analyst. Was it was essentially me exploring and documenting my exploration.
I love it. And I love that. I really like the context of you getting thrown in the drunk tank for a night, and then you know just being pissed because for yeah should you have to take a piss test for a year? Absolutely not. And then this whole decentralized aspect. So take us through like how did you find Web3?
All right. So my brother had been talking about Bitcoin since like 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, the first time I came and visited him in 2017, first time I heard about Bitcoin was here in where at this college in his dorm room, and he also told me about Tesla then, and they were both things that were like futuristic things I didn't really care about.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so I jumped in when it started spiking in COVID to crypto a bit more, and for some more context here, I streetwear and like archive fashion and things like that was a huge thing to me. Obviously, skateboarding and surfing, the culture that comes along with that. Um,
Mhm.
and when I saw NFTs and Web3, I saw that human aspect and how it wasn't just technology and the interesting uh, speculation and psychology behind that, but it was actually cultural integrations here, the human side to crypto. And then that was something that I had an understanding of in terms of the cycles and the trends and the dynamic of how people look at the hype cycles of stuff, because I've been in trading in fashion and all of that. And that recognition, that double down layer of comfortability, I guess, sort of sparked me into it. And I blanked again.
You're talking about how you're getting into Web3 and that how you're seeing the technology merge with more cultural aspects of things. You took us through Tesla, your brother talking about Tesla and Bitcoin.
Yeah, yeah. It was just a really slow start, because, like I said, I didn't have any sort of existing tech or
Right.
financial knowledge to come with it, and especially the whole online gaming culture. Like, I played RuneScape, but I didn't participate in
Oh
the
my
like.
God. I'm going to
Here we go,
hold you
man.
here, bro. You're like, there's what Maddie and I are going to make a
Wild.
RuneScape video.
We're
It's
making a RuneScape
we're at
video.
like 75%. I mean, maybe not 75, but a majority of the people, and we are
Yeah.
in the hundreds now. They bring up RuneScape, dude.
And it's RuneScape. It's not like
It's
there's
not just
how many
video
games are
games.
out there
It's
that's similar, but it's
RuneScape.
RuneScape every time somebody says, and then RuneScape, and we have to pause because it's just wild, man.
I
The
gotta write
who's
this
who
down.
of people who are successful in Web3 that started in RuneScape somehow is wild. So
It's
you're in good company.
unbelievable.
So just that's a
Cool,
good thing. So
cool.
let's keep going. You
Explain.
were so
Wait,
RuneScape. Give
You
us
gotta tell us about RuneScape. Like, but expand on that a little bit.
So honestly, I doubt I got as deep as these other people you're mentioning, and I see the significance there. It's like one of the first places where people could all come together in a single sort of platform and have that marketplace and that virtual marketplace experience,
Yeah.
at the central marketplace.
Mhm.
But yeah, so in terms of RuneScape, is just, I see that as the most relevant thing to Web3, honestly. So that's why I throw it in, because that's the only relevant gaming experience I've had. But it's like, so with that, I participated in the actual gaming, but not the social side to stuff, where I see sort of that connection to Web3, where it's like that socializing in the marketplace and such. So honestly, the significance is not that deep with me, but I recognize the significance. That's why I whip it out.
Well, no, I think the significance is that it is apparently a great way to visualize what Web3 could be like in a
Yeah.
game, right? And
Mhm.
like it really is, I'm assuming, the first half step into a metaverse, right? Like that's what people imagine a metaverse society looking like. I don't fucking know.
Well, the
Yeah.
funniest thing with all these gaming and metaverses is that, like, the actual product, I know it takes a long time to develop, so we're going to see it take time, but the product to market in that, the graphics are all trash and stuff. So honestly, that's what I'm thinking. Like, why not just upload RuneScape and let's all play RuneScape and then put these Web3 integrations in, and it's already built for you. But yeah,
Right, exactly. That maybe we should just
Yeah.
do that after we get off of this stream because apparently everyone else knows what RuneScape is and has had a
Mhm.
big ass influence on them. It would be a hit.
yeah, just throw ordinals in the title and you'll probably rip. um,
All right, so continue down the Web3 journey path
yes.
of how you're getting into it.
So we're still really early on. It's like I'm getting amongst it. First time using Discord. I actually had never used Twitter. I sort of didn't care whatsoever about social media. I just post like my 35. I do a lot of 35 millimeter photography and stuff, so I post a lot of that. Just
Okay.
the stuff that I generally like. One thing with me with traveling so much is that, like, I can scroll back to 2015 and, like, when I was in Albany, and then you can sort of follow my life all the way through. So I don't delete any posts or curate it. I just post what's happening in my life, and then it's more so for myself. But yeah, so Twitter, I hadn't used it at all. So then it came in completely fresh to that. Essentially, all the infrastructure of Web3, I had no experience with whatsoever. And so, peak bull market, it was like December 21. So I came in where it was just like you go on a Discord and it's glitching because there's so many people talking because there's
Yep.
like that much FOMO and stuff. And I was like, this is gnarly. Um, and honestly, because of that, I found it hard to integrate into any community. So it took me, I came in December. April was the first time I joined a community when I was like, oh, this is what that means. So like
And what
that
was
was
that?
that was Fuck Render's community, and I work there now. That was actually a huge catalyst with a lot of stuff. My articles, that was the first article I ever did. That was how I got the job. Um, but I'll go into that into a sec. Like I was essentially just participating as a consumer for the longest. Wasn't really making any money or anything. And then this one project called Tripsters, which was about psychedelics and mushrooms. So I
They've
was
been
like,
on our
oh,
show.
oh,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I jumped on, and then and I was in the first 100 there. So I guess that was sort of somewhat of my first community actually. But then like I got a moderating position there, and that was the first step behind the curtains in Web3. And I saw how no one knows what the fuck is going on.
Nah.
And I was like, oh, like there is no rule book here. You can provide value, and the role will shape itself around you. And so just that was a catalyzing moment for the confidence and for that realization of like just how the structure behind wasn't as complex as what it looked like when it came out to you on the big scale,
Yeah.
when they're dropping like a video or something. And then so from there I was moderating that and just doing different moderating jobs, but then I just started getting into thinking about how else I can provide value, and what else I can do. And that's my thought process there is something that I give a lot of people advice about, in terms of when you're thinking about that, you'll often think about what other people are doing and you try and mirror that. But what I ended up coming to is like, what do I have a passion in? What do I do in my own time? What do I enjoy doing? Like, which would provide value to someone else, or someone else doesn't have the time to do it, and turn that into a service. And that was the articles. That was my scientific research. That was my understanding of culture and aesthetics to do the design and all that. And then how that started was I hadn't had any exposure to the art world either. And Fuck Render was my first exposure to that. And at this moment, that was like the most genuine project I'd ever been a part of in terms of bull market sort of roadmaps and stuff. This place was legit.
Right.
And Fuck Render was this huge, like renowned artist in the bull market. He was, especially then, was just massive. And I was like, I don't even remember why I thought to do it, but I just put an article together, broke down the project from top to bottom, made it look good, and then I posted it on Twitter. And he followed me and shared it, and then he jumped in the DMs and sort of invited me in. And I just started working, just doing little bits around there, but then moved into being. I sort of got in there, and then that showed me that I have the ability to do more than just be this sort of moderator, facilitator sort of stuff, and that opened up a lot. That obviously started my articles and stuff, and the experience of joining that community, they were just the first time being somewhere where it wasn't just packed with stuff, and they're all art collectors. So it's
Right.
like very genuine people, a lot of like deep web people, like meme sort of like not safe for work stuff where it's like just hilarious. And they were all skateboarders, like into fashion and stuff like that. So I just really resonated with everything there. And that showed me sort of the core ethos of, oh, this is what community is, and this is the purpose of all that. So that was a big learning experience. And I'd say that was like the initial foundation that I sort of stepped off from, and just got down and dirty in working hard in consistently producing articles and making my network, building that out. That was a huge thing early on. I said, I'm not making money, so I'm going to change my desired asset to connections and network. And that was one of the biggest decisions that I made, honestly.
I love the fact that you made that pivot and then yet again understand the power of the network, which is going to be massive in the future. So take us through this journey in the sense of what you've learned really, um kind of up till now, because I was in it a little bit earlier. That was August that year, and then Hate Beast happened. So you were coming right in like the height of Hate Beast craze. So from
Yeah, they
that,
minted like right then when I came in. I'm pretty sure.
yeah, they were right about to mint. There was already 4 million people in the server. Um, Take us through what you learned though, because I feel it was an interesting journey. And the thing that stands out to me is that the space was so crazy, you couldn't even start a community till 4 months later. So
hmm
what did you learn from those communities? What did you learn from the article writing, and then why? And any Web3 reasons as to why you pivoted to network, not making money.
Well, I learned a lot of like stuff about the actual industries, but in terms of actual underlying things that I learned, I think honestly it just reinforced the feelings and the thoughts that I got after like I did the science and achieved these things where it's that sort of underlying arrogance where it's like I believe that I can do whatever I want. And I think honestly anyone can. It's about that belief that sort of catalyzes these different behaviors and different decisions to do that stuff. But yeah, it it what it's taught me is that all the things that I believed about freedom and just taking this alternative path that people have always said is somewhat dumb and just like against the grain because what it is, and it's like it is possible. Like the businesses that I'm starting now are arguably financial and marketing and stuff, which all of my friends, like peers, are going to college for, and none of them own a business around. And I'm a microbiologist, so it's like it's kind of hilarious in terms
Right.
of that. Like that is literally proof of concept of the fact that this stuff doesn't matter. Like, not that school doesn't matter, but the actual qualification and stuff, it's not required. You can do stuff your own way, and you can have your sovereignty and be your own person and build your own path. And that's one of the strongest things that I believe in, and that's always been one of the most important things to me as a person. Coming from those lessons that I got as a child and also in college, but yeah, just the reinforcement of that just really drove in the excitement for me and gave me the green light and like this is the right place to be because it's like regardless of the technology, regardless what I think about crypto, regardless of all this, it's like the underlying things is that that network is there and all these people, whatever is emerging in the world, they're going to be front and center working on that. So it's these connections that I'm making aren't restricted to the NFT world. And
Hmm.
regardless of the technology or what I'm working on, I'm giving myself freedom and sovereignty, which I've been spewing out to everyone around me for months and years, but have never really stepped up the plate to actually live up to. And then now I'm doing it, and it's like it's a beautiful thing. And
Yeah.
just lean into that. That's what I'm doing now. It's like I don't know what's coming, just lean in.
I love it. Maddie, what do you got?
What I really love about this, Bill, is, when you're on a Twitter space or just a quick AMA and you don't have time to do what Mikey and I do, which is get into that Star Wars episode 1 and 2. Somebody might ask you briefly, why are you in Web3 or what got you into Web3? But imagine how different it is now. Saying what you just said, right? All of these connections that we've already discussed and extracted and pulled from these influences, habits, these motivations, these driving factors in your life. And the truth is all of those have culminated and Web3 is an answer to them for
Mhm.
you. And it just like embodies these things that matter to you. And I think it's wild because without that backstory, it really doesn't mean as much. It doesn't carry the gravity. But when you say it just like you did, it was very succinct about it being the road less traveled. It's like that alternate path, right? And then it's ripe with opportunity, the concept of it being truly free and autonomous, and just everything you're saying, how it comes together it's just a very easy puzzle piece for you. It almost seems obvious, right? But it's not obvious when we don't get the time to do this kind of stuff. And I just think this is really cool because, when people ask Mikey and I why we do this, this is what it comes down to. So it's exciting to hear.
Yeah.
100%. I appreciate that, mate. And I couldn't agree more. You go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah,
Well,
I was just gonna say, like, obviously that's like from the stories I've told and what you just said, that's one of the things that I appreciate most. And just in my scientific perspective, looking at things and obviously what I've touched on about the the source of happiness, like I see these connections in these relationships not just as an asset or a transaction. It's like this is the meaning of life. It
hmm
These interactions, this communal thing that we have going on, which is the differentiator from our species from the rest of nature. It's the ability to come together and become behind
yep.
one vision and actually communicate those feelings and communicate those things. And I recognize that and appreciate that. And
hmm
um, this is also like a place where you can talk to someone from Belgium and someone from New Zealand and someone from Japan all at the same time.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter where you are, and that's it's networking and meeting people and making relationships and friends, but catalyzed in a way that we've never seen. So it's a huge opportunity.
Absolutely.
Love
Absolutely.
it.
Beautifully said, man.
Yep.
So take us through what's going on today. You've doubled down on the relationship part, but there's also the real reality that you want a Wi-Fi connection and a tablet, and you need to make some money to get to this beautiful farmland in Sicily. So, what are you doing to make that dream a reality?
Yeah.
Um, I'm honestly not sure. So that's another important thing to touch on with me too, in terms of my future, and that freedom thing that I touched on previously, which I don't know how long I need it for, is goals, not expectations. I want fluidity so that, and this also comes from my experience with psychedelics, because it's like the best trips you can have are the ones where you don't plan it, where you don't know that you're going out the next day to do that, where you're just like, wake up, you're like, wow, it's a beautiful day. And then you take a tab and then you go walk around the forest. And it's like the ones that you plan, you set up these different sort of things that you want to hit. And it's like when you're tripping, you have no ability to sort of coordinate that. And then you're like, oh, we missed this,
Mm,
we missed this, we missed this. But when you do it and you don't have a plan, everything is like unexpected and amazing. It's like, whoa, that's awesome. And it's like,
There's something to be
and it's
said
like,
there.
yeah, apply
yeah.
the same thing to life. And it's like, I'm not going so far to say don't have goals and don't have aspirations and don't have any
Right.
structure, but it's like, don't tie myself into any one path, let it ebb and flow, let it come as it takes. And it's like, just lean into the areas that I see the opportunity and I want to sort of explore through. So it's like with this, I haven't thought past May when I graduate. I have the ability to go up and move in with my brother and his mate for a while. I can, like, I don't know, that's kind of like everything that I want is just that unknown. I
Yeah.
don't want to like know where I'm going.
And I think that makes
And
sense for your part, where you are at in life as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
mhm,
Um, I think another way of asking it, more framing it in Web3 then is, and you said it there
mhm.
at the end, what opportunities do you see in Web3 being in the current bear market that we have? What you're doing with Builder's Block, whether you want to talk about that or the network you have built. What are your thoughts on what are some thoughts on your mind there?
Yeah, so this year I've really scoped in on the developments that I want to put my time and energy and resources into and focus on, and they're really the ones where I see the most potential in terms of actually building out an infrastructure and a foundation for the future. I think that is what we're going to see this year, and the founders I've already had calls with them pitching their new developments. That's what it seems like is happening. Is we're seeing the real players come out and specialize in a certain direction,
hmm
and really take their place within the market. Like they may have all started, say, as as like an analytics platform, but there's a place for each different niche of that, and I'm sort of seeing that across the board, and especially being on the builders block, especially with you guys as well, you're sort of like a funnel for people coming into the space. So you
Yeah.
see a lot of what's expected to come as well. And I'm like happy to say that the quality of founder and builder that has come into the space since when we started has only increased in terms of the quality of person, and they're making larger sacrifices to have to come into the space, and that in itself is such a promising thing to me. um,
Mhm.
and and so I see the space in certain pillars. I see obviously like there's the
Cool.
narrative and storytelling, there's the music, um, there's the PFPs, there's the art. It goes across the board, and I don't want a piece of everything, but I want to diversify, and that's sort of what I've done. Where it's like what I've focused on now, Lucidia and Fuck Render, that is my art side of stuff. So I'm going to be I'm leading partnerships there and
Mhm.
organizing exhibitions. So for the next 2 years, I'm going to be getting like organizing and coordinating all the renowned artists to come and do exhibitions there and stuff like that. So that'll be really awesome in terms of spreading my network through uh, that cultural sort of area of the space in terms of art and stuff. And then with the builders block and another thing I'm on called Expedition Labs, it's a real big focus on education, and that was the whole core thing with me coming into being an analyst, and backs off my curiosity and background in science is I just want a pure understanding. That is what I like appreciate most is looking at a process and actually understanding how it starts and where it's going to go, and I wasn't finding that within the space, and creating that sort of vetted central place for education where people can learn, not just get financial advice, is a big thing for me, especially if we want to see an uptick and onboarding. I think creating those central, approachable, and consumable places for information is important.
Yeah.
And then yeah, just looking out for those different things that I see being as a potential pillar. And this year it's just been a lot of talking to different people and having meetings from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep to just talk concepts. And that's one of the most beautiful things about this space and why we have such fruitful products and concepts coming out is because of the lack of that geographical barrier where we can just have meetings from the moment we get up to the moment we go to sleep with some of the brightest minds from around the world that are in this industry right now. And it's like when you
Yeah.
have that sort of mix up and diversity and bring it all together, it's like it just speeds that up to the nth degree. So that's been a really cool thing for me, is just seeing, especially now as the market's been shaken out for a few months, you just see who the builders are and who the people are like you two that are here with a genuine purpose. You know, not just here to be here; they're here for something, and they're the people that I'm sort of trying to. I see the future building around and the infrastructure being built off, and that's where I'm trying to put my time and energy.
I love it, man. Maddie,
Yeah.
any thoughts
So good.
there?
No, man, I think it's great. I like what you were going into. I was originally thinking like kind of take us into the almost like the pitch. Like what are you doing? What's the elevator pitch? If I were to say like what are you doing right now in Web3, what would you say? But I think you brought I mean you kind of it wasn't necessarily the elevator pitch, but it was a good background on what and why, which I think is really
Mm-hmm.
good.
Cool. Yeah, I think the one that stands out is sort of that fuck render art side of the space where everything
Hmm.
else is sort of directed towards marketing and
Yeah.
education and stuff. But that's something that we didn't really get into that we can maybe save for another call one day. But
Yeah.
the that exposure to the art side and just the significance and seeing how many people really care, and then moving into putting myself in that perspective of caring and looking through it like that and being like, wow, this is like insane. And it's like I'd never looked at
Mm,
art in the diverse perspectives that this provided me, and then even art as the experience and art as the performance, like the feeling that that you get from it, which Alpha Centauri kid taught me with the great color experiment and stuff. So I've just had some really, really cool experiences in that. And there's, especially with fuck render, there's something that strikes a chord with my aesthetic that I really like in terms of the stuff he does. But yeah, that's been really interesting to get into. And I'm actually going to be working with some pretty high up names in that industry. And it's funny because I'm just lacking just in terms of, like, I've had meetings with these blokes and then I tell people and they're like, what? Like, that's crazy. And it's like, I just thought this was a normal dude,
Yeah.
which he is. And he is. And that's the thing, treat people like people. And it's like,
Yeah.
I have a great relationship with that dude now. And yeah, that's exciting. It's definitely a niche one for me, but I think that's going to be one of like the most interesting avenues I go down in this space. Just everything incorporating art and having like a figurehead like Fuck Render and have that relationship with him. And it's sort of like catalyzing me into that industry where like someone that couldn't even at the start of the year didn't even know how to appreciate art. Now I'm working with one of the best artists, digital artists in the world, to organize his exhibitions and stuff. And you just get absolutely saturated with and just blown away with like the importance of this and the care of this. And I don't know, it's just really interesting. I've never had that experience before, to be so far into something and then just get so front and center. And also appreciate it as well.
Yeah, and I'm glad you actually bring that up. I actually don't have to step away. I thought I did, but I don't have to tonight.
Oh, okay.
The question is that around art, right? We hear topically on Twitter, it's all about the art, but like, and then people you hear a lot of times say, I now can appreciate art. Well, describe that to us, and what does that mean to you? Because you've obviously started to take that journey.
Yeah, I think the best way to describe it is the most catalyzing experience for me, which was from Alpha Centauri Kid, with that one where it was like, I won't go in depth about the narrative and everything he did, but essentially it was an open edition before the open edition matter. It was halfway through last year, but all of his stuff is really sought after in Christie's and Sotheby's and things like that. And then the opportunity for an open edition from him was unheard of. Like, it won't happen again, most likely. Anyway, grabbed one of those and it was insane. I was super hyped. And the next day he changed everyone's metadata to Max Payne by I'm blanking on his name right now. It's kind of embarrassing, honestly, but X Copy. That's right.
Yes.
And so it was just like he rugged us, but on purpose and on stage, and everyone was like, "What?" Like, genuinely felt the pain of like, "Well, damn! I just thought I had an ACK piece and it got ripped away from me." And then he went through this whole performance of like feeling that pain and then going through it. And then in the end, we got to choose one of 10 different colorways. But then at the end, he didn't explain any of this while it was going on. He dropped this whole thread explaining it and explaining how he wanted to evoke that feeling within you. And I was just blown away. I was like, didn't know art, and especially like art on a screen, could go further than that into a whole process, bringing in thousands of people all at once to experience the same sort of feeling all at once. That was super, super eye-opening, and something that's only able to be done at the intersection of art and technology with NFTs, where you do like Checks and Jack Butcher, an experiment like that in society, but on such a large scale. And I think just seeing that coordination is beautiful between people all over the world, feeling the same thing evoked from one action in an image. So yeah, the power of feeling that comes out of the artwork is the thing for me. It's deeper than you can absorb it and take art in so many different ways. And what I used to do, which was a mistake, was just look at it and take the literal picture. But my favorite thing to do with visual art now is a 1 second look and just think about the feelings that are evoked in me in that, based on the color, how the artist actually put the color down on frame. Was it aggressive? Was it soft? Was it smooth? But you don't even think about it that deeply. It's just the automatic feeling that your body gets and your mind gets from absorbing that composition, and there's no explaining why those feelings are evoked in us from that composition of
Sure.
colors and stuff. And I think that's super fascinating as well, because there's something deeper to that message there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Too.
Well, and
Wait, great answer.
yeah,
Appreciate that.
you know, I appreciate it because I'll be honest with you, man. Mike gets mad at me because I say I'm not. He's the creative. I'm not the creative. But here's the thing. My sister is an artist, right? I remember distinctly as a kid. I have an older sister, and I remember her homework assignments. And she's like, "Matt, get over here," and she would like, draw me for a homework assignment, and like it looked like me. And then there's me trying to draw something, and it looks like nothing. You know what I mean? And so
Hmm.
it's always been a gift to me to see people who can do that. What I will say though is this: I still look at art very much the way you said, you used to. However, I do recognize the emotional tie and the feelings that can be expressed through it. However, and here's my only thing is that I think the caveat has to be this. What you're describing is real with people who are good artists, right? And I'm going to make a comparison with food, right? You can feel like you're a chef, but just because you put things on a plate and serve it to me does not mean what you created was cuisine. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Now, if I eat that and the same thing, like people will drink a glass of wine and be like, "Whoa," and you got that person that can tell you all the details. This was in this barrel from this year, from this exact region in France where the grapes had a rainy season. It's wild, right? They know the details, just like people can look at art that way. But most of us drink the glass of wine and say, wow, that was amazing. You know what I mean? And it's just like if that feeling is elicited, then the winemaker has done their job. You know what I mean? And I just think that there's also something to be said for it can't just be art for art's sake. It can't just be art because we say so. And I like that you described it that way because you describe that artist as taking people through that journey and letting them experience the difference. And I think that that's really, really cool because it shouldn't be left out that it is a thing, but just because you have an NFT project doesn't mean that you're like the Picasso we forgot about. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think that
Hmm.
that's something that's there too.
Most definitely, most definitely. And I think it comes in the purpose that the person is putting into it. And
Hmm.
also, I see it sort of as a language, like a level of communication. Um,
Yeah.
like I agree, especially with the NFT project thing, where the incentives aren't in line necessarily. Like you could argue that most of these art ones aren't even for the art; it's for a financial incentive. But
Correct.
say a 2 year old that has no experience in terms of communication in the form of art, if they do some piece of art, I think there is still that same level of meaning behind it. It's just maybe it's not communicated in such like a clear way for people. So people maybe can't take as much out of it on a surface level, but I feel like it's somewhat even more pure. Just the fact that there
Hmm.
isn't a set structured way to sort of make people understand this work. Um, so no, I 100% agree with you, and I think there's a separation between
Hmm.
incentive and the level of communication and ability to make people understand in what you're trying to put out as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
No,
I agree. Mike.
absolutely. No, man,
And
I have nothing to say. Go ahead, Bill.
one thing to tie up art, just for context on me too, and this also gives some context into my role in the space, is I've always loved art. I've been really in depth, like not necessarily with the art industry, but through skateboarding, through fashion, through all of this stuff, I've always really, really appreciated art, music. For the past 5 years on Spotify, they do that Spotify Wrapped, but I've averaged over 150,000 minutes per year of listening and stuff. So it's like a majority of my time is spent listening to music, and that's all sorts of music. You saw
Hmm.
the movies that I enjoy. So I feel like I have, even without that formal understanding of art, I had a really, really deep appreciation for art.
Yeah.
But I've always lacked a medium for expression. I suck at drawing. I suck at painting. I suck at all these visual things. I can't do
Yeah.
computer design too well. Like I do the articles, but that's limited compared to what you see these dudes doing, like Alpha Centauri Kid. But what my expression of art is, and it's beautiful but annoying at the same time, is writing. I'm really good at putting my thoughts into words and writing that in, also through science with that vocabulary that came with that in a beautiful way, I would say. And then it's awesome because I can write a magical piece about whatever I want. But the thing that sucks about it in comparison to these other expressions and forms of art is that to have someone appreciate it, they have to buy into reading all the BS and also like not just read it, but actually be interested and curious to read it. You can't just look at a
Mm.
piece of paper with writing on it and be like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Right,
So
right.
it's like, so it's like that's sort of been my struggle in terms of having it appreciated, where my professors will appreciate it and I can appreciate it, but then my peers can't appreciate it. And if I try and get them to appreciate it, then they're like, oh, he's trying to get me to read his thingy like about gun laws or about any of these different things that I choose to write about. And I really take pride in providing all perspectives and doing all this stuff. But it's kind of sad when also you're the only one that can appreciate it at the same time. But that's just an interesting thing that I've
Yeah.
recognized too.
So I'm gonna say one thing, and this is what I kind of argue with Maddie about: is listen, I understand you suck at writing. I mean, not writing, drawing and painting, but just like anything else, art is a skill, and you can, if you are really into it, start exercising that muscle. Everyone has a creative muscle. Now, listen, I'm not arguing that some people have a predisposition to being more analytic than creative minded people, but I will say, if you're really that into it, just start fucking drawing, and you can actually become a halfway decent drawer. You know?
Hmm. And that's so. This is actually something that I was thinking about last night in terms of I was trying to deconstruct the whole thought and concept around creativity and whether it's used too much. And I think it is because, and I was thinking how I could go and revisit painting and drawing with this in mind, with like me being someone that doesn't have that belief with me. When I go in to draw something, what I'm trying to draw is a majority of the time you're trying to sort of fit a template that other drawers or other artists or other people you know that can draw have done. You're trying to draw someone
100%.
else's creativity and work. And that's not creativity. True and pure creativity is when you break out of those templates and you're not making anything that resembles anyone else's. You're just purely channeling it from somewhere else. And I heard that from Rick Rubin, who I love his mind. He thinks about this stuff in an incredible way. But I thought that was interesting how I never thought about that. How like I've never truly created a piece of visual art for that I can remember where I did it out of pure creativity. It was always trying
Right.
to channel or fit into someone else's box, which
Yeah,
is
and then
interesting.
and most minds immediately just go to I'm gonna like, oh, I'm not a good artist because I can't draw exactly what my eye sees in real life. And it's
Hmm.
like, well, that's just one tiny version of types of art people create, right? Um, so I love to hear Matt's response to this.
I mean, my response to it is I get what you're saying. It's a skill, man. But listen, like I use my example of my sister. I'm telling you, man, I grew up next to an artist.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? I used to draw. My point is her drawings at 8 surpass anything I've ever done ever trying to. And so
a hundred
for
percent.
me, but for me, here's the thing. I would say this. I think we can express art in different ways. It doesn't just have to be drawing, right? I mean, Bill, you were talking about photography, 35 millimeter film. Correct? 35 millimeter film. Is that right?
Yeah,
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So, the bottom line is that I think that film is one of the cinema to me is art. You know what I mean? I'm fascinated by like why the director chose to show it from this angle or make this cut or do this
Yes.
transition to tell a story and give a story arc. I think that's amazing. And writing, right, can be art, right? I mean, just to be able to write a story creatively and keep me engaged with just words and make my brain think of what you're writing down in text. I think that can be beautiful, you know. I think that cuisine can be that way, right? I mean, one of the simplest things to your point, Mike, about creating a perspective is like even if you just give somebody a phone and say, take a picture of me the best way you see me,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whatever they give you tells you something, doesn't it? Right?
Absolutely.
This is how this person sees you. It doesn't matter if it's the same way you see yourself or the way that Bill might see me, right? This is telling me something. And so to your point, Bill, like everything does say something about yourself. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. And everything can be perspective, you know, but I'm just in terms of how that is demonstrated, I think that there's a lot of missing pieces that people don't necessarily teach with this.
Right.
And I think we just get bogged down by a lot of the details. I mean, you're right. I mean, how do you teach this to a 5-year-old in an art class?
Right.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
how do we express that? And I just think that you have to have a level of maturity to be able to look back and understand what this can mean.
Yeah.
But I do think it's fascinating, and I do think stuff like that would be fascinating if, you know, we always talk about things like standardized testing, but wouldn't it be interesting if we took kids from 2 years old through 18 and did different things artistically, whether it even just be like take a photo of something important to you, uh, draw a picture of something important to you, or draw a picture of like your favorite day or whatever. My point though is like looking back at those over a profile of a whole, you know, upbringing would probably give you a lot more insight into who this person is than we think. And so anyway,
Hmm.
that's a whole different side topic.
Yeah.
But we do
No,
just
that's
time
fascinating.
purposes, man. I have to watch what we're doing because I'm fascinated by this, but Mikey and I can go till like sunrise. Um what can we I do kind of want to hear where you see this going. I want to move a little bit like where do you see, I know you don't like talking about the future, but let's just say up until May, you know, what are your thoughts? Like, or what's the plan? What's the vision?
Wait, hold on real quick. Bill, did you have anything to add on to what Maddie just said?
Yeah, I think everything you said there actually is perfect and beautiful. It's like honestly, what that tells me is that everything is an art form in a way. And
Yeah,
like my photography, I also really enjoy cooking. I also really enjoy like cinema for the same reason that you do.
yeah,
And Rear Window actually ruined, like as I said before, I don't like glorified films and romanticized films and stuff. And that was a result of Alfred Hitchcock and Rear Window and the whole concept you're talking about with framing, because that
yeah,
I've watched that like 20 times over like this one semester because I was just fascinated by the framing in that and how it was somewhat like tricking the viewer and to make them feel a certain way. And then whenever I'm watching movies now, I feel like I look at that depth and I can see through the
yeah.
BS in these sort of like comedies or whatever.
You
And
bet.
then also on the film as well, just quickly, I love that's a good thing. I didn't really go into that, but that's actually a really big part of me, especially with the traveling too, and the scarcity of it. I think film is beautiful because you only get one shot and you don't get to see it until you finish the role, and then it's sort of like you're opening a little box of memories.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
because it's only one shot, like my wall is littered with photos from Australia, and to everyone else, it's just a photo, but to me, because it was has that scarcity in that one shot, I look at it, and it's like
Yep,
Harry Potter photos where like they come to life, where it's like I look at it and I remember the scene that was behind it, and it's
for
like a
sure.
little, yeah, it's a good trigger for that, and I really
That's cool.
appreciate it in terms of that. But in terms of where what my plan is and where I'm going, do you mean in terms of me or more the space?
Both.
Either one, man. Yeah,
Cool. I think it's interesting. I want to keep putting my time and effort into the things where I see genuine future for it. And that's one thing that's sort of come along with taking on more of this role as sort of a facilitator and working and not so much participating in the markets as much is is a lot of my time is taken away from trading and more putting into building and actually doing that. And as a result, I've been critically thinking about a lot of the things that I learned over the past year, to a much deeper degree, and it's cool. And like, I'm just excited. Like, honestly, I don't know where it goes. We've got the house and the builder's block, and Yola's sort of familiar with what's going on there, but there's so much behind the scenes that we still need to roll out. Ours,
Yeah.
we've got so much behind the scenes we need to roll out. Everything that I'm working on right now, honestly, we need to get to a point where we can roll out the full thing. But it's like, what I recognize is that we're at a time in the space now where we can take a step back, breathe, put real structure behind our products, because I think that's one thing that has happened over the past 2 years in this space is that we've seen thousands of genius ideas, but the amount of ideas that are taken to a brainstorming table and actually have it developed, not just straight taken to market, is a rarity. And I think the people that we have seen take that extra step of actually developing an infrastructure and a foundation for their idea and their business that they're rolling out, I think are the ones that are sort of standing and standing above right now. And so there's a real big focus on the things that I'm developing, just putting my effort into that. Obviously, there's a huge emphasis on school right now because I want to get out of here. So
Yeah.
that's honestly come really nicely this semester. My organization has stepped up another level. I've got this notepad here that I use for everything because I'm a visual learner, but I break down every day into each individual step and each individual task that I have to do. And then I have tasks for all of my projects and stuff that I work on. I actually even have a midlife little section up here.
Fantastic.
And and so it's like just organization of my work has bled over into my school, and it's
Hmm.
sort of allowed me to stay on top of that really nicely. And so I'm just chugging it out right now. Honestly, I'm head down working, uh,
I like it.
taking. I've recognized, especially last year, that this is a moment where I don't have responsibility, but also like I have the fallback of still being in college and having that to sort of sustain me. So I'm sort of in like a final sprint because I'm like, there's like 2 months of this left, and then I need to do this and also like not be going to school and stuff. Which actually, in retrospect, I'm paying for everything myself right now. So I'm not stressed. I'm excited. I am extremely,
I
extremely,
love
extremely
it.
excited to finish school and just and get out there and get into traveling, head down to Sicily. um, but yeah, no, I'm taking it each day at a time, and like what we spoke about before, living in the future and living in the past. Right now, I'm just living right where I am, and it feels pretty good, honestly.
Dude,
It's a great place to be.
we are almost at 2.5 hours. You said you didn't know if you're going to be able to get through the first half hour, but we're here, bro. And you did a hell of a
Yeah.
job, man. I mean, such insightful, a lot of deep thoughts. Uh, thank you, man. Just thank you for all of that. We have, and I think you've probably seen our show. I don't know if you made it to the end. Most people don't, which is, I still always like to shout this out. We still, a lot of times have double digit people watching us for 2 to 3 hours, which is just fascinating to me that people will just hang in for that long.
Hmm.
But I love it, and I think your conversation tonight was fantastic. But we do have two final questions, and the first one is, do you have any questions for Maddie and I? Because we vibed for 2.5 hours, and they was all you. It was all questions towards you, and we like to throw the courtesy out to the guest. Uh, and if you don't have anything, it's totally cool, man. Not a big deal.
Yeah. How do you all get so cute in the morning?
Well, I'll tell you this. You pop two, what you think they're the equivalent of basically Ambien the night before, and then you wake up in the morning and you look at the mirror and you go, I don't give a fuck what I look like today. That's how you get so cute. You just roll with the punches, baby.
Beautiful.
That's
No,
my
Well
answer.
said.
genuinely interested about how y'all met, how y'all made this relationship, how you went from your midlife crises to being like, let's start this thing in Web3.
Oh, I guess you've never heard our story. You didn't know our story. Maddie and I met
Yeah.
at the 4th grade bus stop, bro. We have known each other for over 30 years. We met, and if you, we have a little intro video. So if you ever go to our YouTube video, I actually talk about literally my first memory. Well, it was literally when I met Matt.
Wow.
I strolled down to the bus stop, and Matt's like hanging off a stop sign, like perpendicular to the ground. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, who is this kid? And you're 4th grade, you're going to a new school, you're terrified, and like this is the first person I meet. It's Maddie fucking Mintz hanging off a stop sign perpendicular to the ground. And from there, we played video games. We drank a lot of Mountain Dew, ate pizza. We fucking played paintball. We did all of the cool things that kids nowadays don't get to do because God forbid your parents would let you go a mile from the house in the middle of the woods and actually have fun and explore and be creative and, just
Yeah.
trust that you're going to be home in 6 hours from now and that they just kind of don't worry. And we lived a magical childhood. And we went to college together at Penn State. And then life gets in the way and you get married and all of the things happen. And then COVID, we started gaming again together. We'd always kept in touch. I mean, we would talk a handful of times each year.
Yeah.
And when I came home, we would try to make sure that we would see each other if we could. But then COVID happened and, my midlife crisis was a major depressive order, mental breakdown. And, Matt was going through his things as well. And we just decided, you know what? When we were little, we always talked about how cool it would be to build a business with our best buds. And we're like, let's fucking do it. Because I'm telling you right now, if Twitch was around when we were playing Mario Kart and Super Nintendo, we'd be bajillionaires right now. I promise you that. Maddie, I don't know
I
if you
believe
want
it.
anything to add.
No, you nailed it. I mean, and it evolved into this thing that we enjoy to do. I mean, Mike and I love meeting new people and building friendships. And the result was we're like people have figured out ways to monetize things they love and to do before, but we just wanted to be able to do it because we enjoyed it. And then when we realized like, hey, we're good at this, you know what I mean? We enjoy doing this, and we kept getting told from many people that we do this in a way that they've never heard before. You know, when you're good at something, again, you don't necessarily notice it, and so you know, we were just having conversations. This is how we like to talk to people, and it set people at ease, made people have a good time. So yeah, we like to keep doing this, and at the end of the day, it'd be really cool to kind of have a Joe Rogan esque style show where we just talk to fascinating people and figure out what makes them tick, and that's what we just did with you, man. And it's awesome.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. That's awesome. I didn't know that context, and that just adds so much more to it. Honestly, I think that speaks numbers into how this show's actually run, and just the comfortability that I've felt coming on as a guest. Honestly, so that's
Thanks,
awesome.
man.
And I really appreciate y'all for this. And another answer to the question is midlife. That's what I'm going to be putting some time into over the next couple months is building some stuff with you boys, which I'm
Oh
definitely
yeah.
looking forward to.
Hell yeah,
But
man.
no,
We're going to change the
that,
industry. And our second question is actually kind of alluding to what you were getting at is we do like to ask, like, listen, man, you have a Twitter space of your own. You've been part of all of these projects. You've experienced Web3 through Twitter more than anything else. How do you think tonight went on good old midlife compared to the other things you've experienced?
Definitely the most in-depth I've gotten in a conversation on a personal level with anyone while being in the Web3 space. So you'll officially know Bill slash Bongolo more than anyone in the entire space. So that's pretty cool.
That's the goal,
It's
man.
just the beginning, and
That's
it's
the
just the
goal.
beginning.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
I love
awesome
it.
stuff.
And Maddie, I'll let you say your closing comments. I'll say mine, and then onward
Wrap
and
it up, man.
upward, we're gonna just
Yeah.
continue to kick ass. And like you just said, Bill, I can't wait to keep on growing and winning together and see what we can all whip up together too, because I think it's gonna be something special.
Most
Yeah. I
definitely.
mean, so to close out, basically, it's this. The, you heard it before. Mikey says it. We're basically we're starting a friendship through a conversation, but it's just that we're starting it, right? Bottom line is we're going to keep working together, moving the space forward, and it's going to be an adventure. I really respect a lot of the things that you said. First of all, let me just override our overarching thing here. To be 23 years old and to have a conversation the way you just did is unbelievable. And that in itself is rare air. The fact that you're willing to look inward and identify not only strengths and weaknesses, but just like causes and effects of how you were raised and who you are and what that means is incredible. And to say things like, the future is something I want to keep fluid because I want to focus on now. That you understand, like there's people our age that spend a lot of money to give to therapists and psychologists just to learn mindfulness. You know what I mean? And
Right.
and you're doing that right now, and not just doing it. You actually you're living it. It's not just a talking point for you. And giving us the background, your story, where all of this came from has been a fascinating road. And here's how I kind of wrap it up, man. It's like you started out by saying how, the whole kind of idea of studying mushrooms and this stuff that you got published with and the research. And it's wild because somebody like me, I'm gonna be like, yeah, mushrooms are cool. Or even somebody who's had a trip before and they're like, mushrooms are cool. And then there's you saying mushrooms are cool and it's different. Do you know what I'm saying? Because you have investigated what there is to know about it. You've broken it down to its fundamental components, like you said, and you've figured out what makes it work. And the reason I say that is that most people in this space say things like this: Web3 is cool, NFTs are cool. And you say Web3 is cool and NFTs are cool. You're coming from that same exact space, this desire and this heart you have to break things down to their fundamental components and figure out what makes them tick and how to make them better. And that's what you're doing, man. And it's fascinating. And it was just delightful to be able to spend time hearing that. I think it's awesome that you're living in the moment. I hope we get to share more moments, as we build a team framework together with Midlife.
Wow. I really, really appreciate that, man. Yeah, this is stuff that I think about all the time, and honestly, it's topics that you can't bring up in a normal and everyday conversation. So honestly, it's like it's a rarity to be able to have this sort of conversation on this level with people. And we talked about a lot of stuff today that I haven't even really thought about or talked about in a long time, but are really impactful to me as well. So I just really appreciate that, and I just appreciate the
Sure.
way you'll conduct this, and it speaks numbers about what you guys are doing. Just the fact that you can create an environment where I can come on here and just completely open up about who I am and the things that sort of make me tick, and
Yeah.
I've I haven't had that experience before with especially in Web3, and it's pretty eye opening. So I really really appreciate what you just said, and hats off to you guys for this. It's really something special.
Thanks, man. And
Thank you,
I'll
man.
add, everything Maddie just said, kind of off of what you said, Bill, is like it's pretty incredible that we just had like a 2.5 hour plus conversation. But you also did this on an internet with a community and family we've cultivated, and they got to
Yeah.
learn that about you too. So it's
Mhm.
it's it's almost like special because in the moment it's the three of us chatting, but really we're chatting to the world too. And it's like, it's this cool little twist that Web3 and the internet allows you to do. And I just, adding on, we've already talked, a handful on the phone, but, now having gone through this experience, why Maddie and I are so adamant about why this is just it's not only special, it's just a needed thing that is missed a lot, even in this space, right? How many times have you heard in Web3 that it's about community and friendships? But you just said, and we believe, you haven't built a friendship like this yet in a 2.5 hour period. And I think doing this is going to really build the base of what we have just become organically in a beautiful way, friends, and continue to grow our partnership together in the future. So I thank you for that. And I just want to reiterate what Maddie said, to being vulnerable and opening up online, even though we might draw you in as like it's just the three of us talking. It is online. People are listening. People have been chatting the whole time. And they loved you, man. They loved you. So thank you for doing that. This is going to be awesome, man. Get ready for a wild ride. You've got the right mindset. I'm insanely impressed at how you think at the age that you are. You continue that, and we're going to live a long, fruitful life together. And that's the key word, together, because I love the fact that we bring people on this show and that I can talk to somebody that is so much younger than me, and what we bring to the table compared to what you bring to the table, we're just going to continue to win and learn and grow together, and that's a magical thing, man. So thank you for everything.
Wait, there's people listening to this?
Yeah.
No. I really appreciate y'all, and I think we've covered everything in this little wrap up, but yeah, again, I just appreciate the way that y'all approach this, and you're mindful of that as well, and you understand that creating this environment for someone just opens them up, and that every single person has something to teach, even if they don't know what it is. And that's cool that you guys are the miners going in and digging around people's brains to find the little gems and chests of gold. So
I love it.
beautiful
That's a
stuff.
great way to put it. I haven't heard that analogy yet, but yes,
I love it.
we're digging for gold, and we found a lot tonight, brother. So thank you. And with that being said, people, we are back next week with Gas Guzzlers. They were a little pseudo hyped project, but learned meet the founder through Nikki G's network of people. So dude's super cool. Excited to talk to him. They're doing some interesting things on the space. Again, super young, insanely knowledgeable in the space already, and the saying go-getter with some pretty large backing. So it'll be a great conversation. We freaking love you all. Thank you so much for tuning in for almost 3 hours. We'll see you next week. Actually, no, we're going to see you all tomorrow. We got a Titter space.
Oh, no.
I was trying to say Twitter, but I said Titter. We got a Twitter space, and we're going to do our first ever. It's called Crisis Averted, and it is going to be at 10:30 a.m. Eastern, and this is what we're going to do, people. Get excited for this. Maddie and I are going to bring two current event topics within the space. We're going to riff on them, and then we're just going to have an open forum, and you all can come up and we can have a casual conversation, because the one thing we don't get to do is talk to you all a lot. So we're going to use this as an open platform for us to have some fun, interesting conversations and hear your all perspectives as well. Can't wait to do it. Crisis Averted episode 1 starts tomorrow. We love you all. Midlife Crisis.